The Cuyahoga County Committee of the Whole will please come to order. The council president is delayed at an outside meeting and has asked me to start the meeting, and I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 1:06 p.m. As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Mr. Tuma. Here. Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher's here. He should be here momentarily. Mr. Schran. Mr. Schran is absent. Ms. Turner.
Present.
Ms. Conwell. Ms. Conwell is absent at the moment. Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Council President Jones is absent at the moment. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Has anybody signed in for public comment?
Yes. Paul Sherlock.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Sherlock, and I am with Radical Hospitality, an organization that works with the shelter-resistant homeless. In front of you are a couple images. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. The collage of pictures were taken along Superior Avenue, where residents and business owners are pushing to get these tents removed. It is upsetting to neighbors, and understandably so, but since the campers are clearly refusing to go to 2100, where are they supposed to go? Jail? What other options are available to them if you don't add into the continuum of care resources for organizations that work with the people who occupy these tents? The next image, the tent city by 2100, says so much. People are literally across the street from the shelter and are making a conscious decision to sleep in a tent rather than sleep inside the shelter. What more convincing evidence is there that a rather significant portion of the homeless population will not stay in traditional shelters? And yet Tuesday, on a phone call with the other two organizations that work with people who are shelter resistant, I was told there is no money in OHS's budget for our organizations. Currently, there are 35 spaces for people to stay who are shelter resistant compared to 110 beds last year. And even that organization still doesn't have the money to operate for a full season. Additionally, Radical Hospitality spent the summer looking for a place that would accept us, finding a place only within the last month. We were shut down last year due to us being in a facility that complies with the required safety code for housing people, for us not being in a facility that complies with the required safety code for housing people overnight. The issue of code compliance keeps coming up because churches have been the only organizations to welcome us. Yet these churches only have to comply with the requirements for assembly use, a very different category than churches sleeping people overnight. But they are inner city churches. They have no money. Radical Hospitality has no money. We should absolutely provide the safest way to sleep people, but how? The place that is inviting us to stay is in Slavic Village. Radical Hospitality now has to factor in transportation to the equation of sheltering people, but we cannot possibly get people to our location without help. We have no means to get them there. We are 2 weeks away from when we would normally open, and there is no commitment of money. I'm asking the county to partner with us like you do with LMM and the YWCA. Homelessness is a community problem that requires community solutions, and the shelter-resistant people are part of our community. At some point, we have to stop asking why they won't go to the traditional shelters and simply provide for them. Thank you.
Stephanie Thomas.
Thank you for your testimony. And Councilman Schran is now in attendance. Welcome to the committee.
Hi, thank you. Apologies, because I usually prepare something to say, but I think I'll just speak from my experience working with Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless as the street outreach worker in Ohio City for the last 2 years.
And could you
My name is
introduce?
Stephanie Thomas.
Okay,
Thank you. Many individuals are shelter resistant. They just simply will not go to 2100 or Norma Her for overnight shelter. Seeing people who are struggling with mental illness and drug addiction issues outside all winter in Cleveland is not only disheartening, it's not right. We have the opportunity right now to provide an additional 50 beds in Slavic Village, 49-ish. And I'm new to this, but I don't understand why funding isn't available for these programs. I just sat in a 10 o'clock meeting and $6 million was granted to a CDC to build, something that will create economy and jobs and people can also live there. But for there to be delay on just hundreds of thousands of dollars to the overnight seasonal shelter collaborative isn't right. I would ask you to expedite and release funding immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lou?
And for the record, Councilman Gallagher is now in attendance.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Sherlock has been devoted his passion, his expertise, and his sweat equities. In addition to work on his own business, he has been helping the unfortunate, undesired populations in the community. Myself, I actually wanted to be sleeping in the tent, but I was told I'm not qualified. Due to all my physical injuries to cause my health issues, I cannot even sleep outside. I actually resent the term saying shelter resistant. You have been hearing from me for how long? Telling you the shelters are not clean, totally dangerous, and you have all kinds of differential mistreatment. I wish nobody should stay in any kind of shelter like these. But community do not have any proper plans. Only force the government to invest on something only few people will get benefits from. Now, the big chunk of the money will go to build a new county jail, supposedly to be as a campus with services. Unfortunately, also homeless of no services also put up a 5-year strategic planning saying we probably will have an auxiliary shelter be cleaner, not as dangerous, probably humane for people to stay. But when will that happen? Not in 2 weeks, not next month. So in this case, we can all feel today the weathers have been changing. Where should people be? To ask churches to have same kind of equipment as the newly built building. These are churches 100 years old. For their age, when they started, there was no such a code saying they have to install this and that. The problem is, church opened the door for people to stay overnight. Yes, for people to stay overnight, that means some people have to sleep, unless they have insomnia. That would not be very different from your Sunday sermon being too boring, everybody falling to sleep either. So is these requirements are really humane to have? Is our budget, doesn't matter county, city, doesn't matter Cleveland or any other city, has been appropriated properly to actually take care of the most of the ordinary people instead of a few people or organizations for profit? Thank you.
That concludes the public comment portion for today's meeting.
Thank you very much. And our main item for the day, under item number 4, matters referred to the committee, is the budget resolution, and I would ask that that be please read into the record.
Resolution 2023-0285, adopting the 2024-2025 biennial operating budget and capital improvements program.
Thank you very much. And our first presentation is from our county council. Presenting is our Chief of Staff, Joe Nani. I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly thank you for all the excellent work in efficiently and effectively helping the council represent the people of Cuyahoga County. Thank you.
Appreciate that very much. Thank you, Councilman. Good afternoon, council members. Joseph Nani, Chief of Staff for County Council. For those of you following along in the biennial budget book, the council's recommended biennial budget is on page 81. The council's total recommended budget is $2,700,000 for 2024 and $2,751,000 in 2025. This is a 5.27% increase from the 2023 adopted budget. The reason why this is higher in 2024 than in 2023, just like every other department, the budget we have is a 2% COLA increase for salaries and 5% increase in the employer's share of health care benefits for 2024 from the 2023 amount. Our budget mostly consists of salaries and benefits, which total $2,521,758 in 24 and $2,581,422 excuse me, in 2025. That's approximately 93% of the total budget, which is consistent with prior years. The 2024-25 biennial budget includes funding for 11 full-time staff members and the 11 members of council, which is the same number of FTEs that we had in 2023. The remaining $179,229 and $170,365 are budgeted in other expenses line for 24 and 25 respectively. Items that are included in other expenses line item are parking for the folks that come to these meetings from the public and for those that attend council committees and regular meetings, also for council member parking. Also included are print shop costs for items such as agendas, newsletters, informational directories, etc. Other expenses also include our staff's regular postage, not for newsletters, office supplies, any professional reimbursements, subscriptions such as Plain Dealer, Cranes, etc. All are consistent with the prior year's budget. Included in the budget is $55,000 for legal services / consultant contracts. This is consistent with prior years. As you know, we haven't had to utilize these dollars over the years, but having this appropriated has historically been the council, important to council in case we ever needed it. In summary, our recommended budget is consistent with our current year's budget, including the COLA and the increased healthcare costs. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions by my colleagues?
Just a couple.
Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Go what Dale said. It's your leadership, but all the other 10 members of the staff are incredible, and I'd add incredibly talented. And when you get on assignment, it gets done quickly and accurately, which is the most important. Just with how's the budget put together for us? Is that, because I didn't participate in it. It's my second budget, so I'm just curious.
Of course, it's somewhat simple and very similar to what the other departments and other elected officials do. Is usually OBM will present us with a recommended budget that is based on the prior year's budgets. If we have any discrepancies and feel that we need to sit down and talk with them, we do. For example, this past budget, one of our FTEs was removed from the proposed budget because it was actually empty at the time. That was the FTE that Brendan once had when he moved over. So We had already known that we were hiring Devin. Actually, she was teed up
Yeah.
to hire. So we had met with OBM and asked them to add that back in. It's pretty much has remained consistent since the beginning.
Okay, through the chair, just, I was always in the impression that each department or division would make a budget, submit it to the administration, but you're saying it's inversed, or
I
inverted.
don't know exactly how it happens with the individual departments, but I think the base budget is presented by OBM first, and then I think they might be asked ahead of time if they have any additional items to include. But we're usually presented with a recommended budget, and then we sit down and say we agree, disagree.
Good, and then we just amend and then submit it as
Yes.
part of the document.
Yes.
And through the chair, so it goes to the budget analyst, yourself, talk to the
Correct.
council president, and then you check off and complete it.
Yeah, the way it happened is I think that we were presented with the budget. We sat down with our budget analyst, Trevor and I did. We went through and had that discussion, and then we sat down with Purnell and just showed him what we had recommended that FTE be added back in, and went from there.
Perfect. And just one other, just with the casino money.
Yes.
I don't see it in the budget, and I wouldn't mind knowing a little bit more about it, because I know it exists.
Yes.
I know some went to the Variety Theater a long time ago, and then the statue is the only other thing that I recall from the time I've been here. Is it a 50-50 split? Just tell me a little bit on how the process works for us.
If I recall correctly, with the casino fund annually brings in about $8 million. What has been done is it goes right into the casino revenue fund. From that fund, $4 million is allocated to the administration's economic development fund. The rest of it, according to legislation, we have the CDSG fund, where $1.5 million comes out of the CDSG.
Can you go a little bit more deeper on that? Because
Oh, sure.
I'm not as familiar as I probably should be after
Sure.
3 years.
Well, back, I can't remember the year, but it started off that we put in $1 million for the casino revenue, the CDSG fund, which is an application-based program for municipalities and nonprofits. Council passed legislation, it was probably 6-7 years ago, something along those lines. Just recently, I think with the last budget, they increased that amount from 1 million to 1.5 million. But that's through legislation. The next item is the housing program, and I believe council legislation dedicated this past go-around $1 million for those funds.
And through the chair, is that going to be consistent every year?
That has been somewhat consistent. The housing fund, I think at one time took in or allocated 1.5 million on that one, but most recently, I think in this budget is 1 million.
And through the chair, just with the, what's the name of the thing? It's subsidy, the community block grant subsidy?
The community development, CDSG, yes, is that?
Supplemental grant.
Yeah, supplemental grant
Okay.
program.
And just the distribution of it, because it goes to the municipalities. I have Brooklyn. and-
Through application. Every year, actually, it's important to note, I believe the application deadline for those, Cynthia had sent out an email to you guys a couple times. The application deadline is toward the end of November. So we receive all those applications. The Department of Development is very helpful in organizing those applications. And then there's a scoring process that we go through.
Got it. And just because it's my understanding, it goes to the municipalities through the Department of Development, and is it, when you say nonprofits, is it the local CDCs?
Mostly, I believe it's you have to have a nonprofit designation. I can look that up to be clear, but usually it's CDCs that respond.
And then through the chair, is it appropriate for council members to share that with their district and other?
Encouraged, yeah. We try to encourage council members to get the applications out to as many entities that are eligible as possible.
And through the chair, it's projects specific?
Up to $50,000 of community-type projects. There's guidelines that I can present to you, but usually municipal projects include parks, crosswalks.
Administrative stuff?
No administration. It's all kind of like capital-ish type projects for the local municipalities.
Okay, and through the chair, who's the point person? Is it Sarah?
Well, Sarah assists in the Department of Development, but between me and Cynthia.
Since it's a council-driven thing, we keep it in-house?
Correct.
Oh, cool.
Yes. But I will say, I can't say enough about the help that
Oh, Sarah's a rock
Sarah
star.
does to organize us in that regard because she's familiar with the application process with other things.
And through the chair to Joseph, because you introduced yourself that way, it wasn't as bad as you thought it might have been.
I prepare for almost anything.
I know you are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the Office of the County Executive Chief of Staff, Eric Janis. Welcome.
Thank you,
Welcome
Chairman
to
Miller.
the
Appreciate that.
budget hearings.
Thank you. Chairman Miller, members of council, my name is Eric Janis, and I am the new Chief of Staff for Cuyahoga County Executive Chris Ronayne. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you. I think this is my first time, and I'm here today to present the 2024-2025 budget for the Office of the County Executive. The mission of the Office of the County Executive is to administer the powers and duties granted under the Cuyahoga County Charter and the Cuyahoga County Code to achieve the policy objectives of this council and of the executive, and to ensure quality services for our 1.2 million residents. The office does so by providing strategic direction, leadership, and professional management for all aspects of Cuyahoga County government under the purview of the executive. As the county charter makes clear, Cuyahoga County must promote the economic well-being and prosperity of all residents on a fair and equitable basis. As the organization implements policies and programs to achieve these aspirations, the Office of the Executive will lead in a way that demonstrates professionalism, excellence, and equity. The recommended Office of the Executive budget before you is $1.73 million for fiscal year 2024 and $1.76 million for fiscal year 2025. For personnel, the budget for the office is $1.51 million in fiscal year 24 and $1.54 million in fiscal year 25. This reflects a total of 10 positions, which includes the recently created additions of Deputy Chief of Staff for Integrated Development, Special Counsel to the Executive, and Transportation Advisor. With these positions, the office can fully function and lead an organization with an all-funds budget, as you know, of $1.7 billion and more than 4,500 employees. I'd like to thank my Deputy Chiefs of Staff, Katie Gallagher, David Rasm, Debbie Berry, as well as Special Counsel Brendan Doyle and Chief Assistant for Executive Operations Amanda Dempsey for all their help in welcoming me back to Cuyahoga County, where I started my career in local government 26 years ago. I'm impressed and grateful for the determination, dedication, and talent of the Executive Office staff and all the staff under the County Executive who work hard every day on behalf of the residents of Cuyahoga County. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that I am able or will ask my colleagues from administration to assist if needed.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and for the record, Councilwoman Conwell is now in attendance. And do we have any questions by my colleagues? It looks like you're going to get off easy, and I would just make a comment that we have a county executive so that we can have a coordinated set of policy objectives that are coordinated through all aspects of county government, and the office of the county executive and your staff helps make that happen. So I support your request. Thank you
so
very
much,
much for
Council
coming
Chair.
in.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Thank you all.
Next on our agenda is the County Sheriff, Sheriff Harold Patel.
Good morning, Honorable Council and Chair.
Welcome.
My name is Harold Patel. I consider it an honor to have been selected by Executive Ronayne and to have earned your confirmation as to serve as Cuyahoga County Sheriff. Before I go on, I'd like to introduce members of my staff who are here with me today. I'd like to introduce Business Manager Donna Khalil, Kendra Zusi, Chris Costin, Warden Michelle Henry, Chief Deputy Aaron Reese, Captain Rich Peters, and Captain Jay Hodge. Today is my 104th day on the job, and I'm pleased to report some of my findings in the introduction to my budget report. You hired me to do this job, and I am 100% committed in making this a better operation. I have the experience and capability to move immediately in the direction and the vision I share with you and Executive Chris Ronayne. I own this operation and look forward to working with you and Executive Ronayne on improving our conditions in our department. The department is made up of many hardworking, resilient, and committed employees, which makes me proud to say I have a terrific team. Corrections, protective services, law enforcement, civil divisions, all working equally hard in their respective functions. My introductory PowerPoint highlights some of the outstanding accomplishments these proud members have made through sheer sacrifice and grit. I have identified incredible talent and ability and pushed their limits, but understand the elasticity is finite. Sustainability needs to be attained. We're in the process of negotiating 7 collective bargaining agreements. Recruitment is going well, illustrated by the corrections onboarding chart we'll show shortly, and the fact the deputy sheriffs are at our full budgeted number. Recruitment is a core component of employee morale and retention because we need people to help carry the load. So that's one thing I want to mention for all sides of the house. Culture is looking up, as evidenced by comments from employees. I get as I travel throughout the department. And the gentleman who made comment in public comment last week when we opened the meeting and spoke to the fact that culture needed to be changed, or else if you open a new facility, you'll just transpose the same old culture there. And I can tell you that we're making that change to have a much better culture, a professional culture, building on what we have here when we move some years down the road. We are successful in collaborating with all of our partners, the courts, the police, Health and Human Services, all of our partners. We are looking at improving access point security with K-9 teams into the facility because that will save lives. I'll speak a little more about it, but that initiative is going to save lives. We're looking at restoring the corrections training sergeant. Why? It's important to enhance training delivery and ensure that we assess training needs on a consistent basis in the correctional facility. We have reinstituted jail shakedowns, resulting in overall order. Increased oversight is put in place. Why? Because it is important that things that should not be there, contraband, whether it may be harmful or not, or perceived as harmful or not, is not allowed to pile up in the housing facilities. So that's another initiative we've taken through at the jail. As I walk through the jail and speak with different officers, different supervisors, members of the SRT team, they've identified a number of things, and I'm working closely with the chief deputy and the wardens to get ahead of those. But we're going systematically through these. As we know the old adage, a cinch by the inch, hard by the yard. Digital mail scanning is in the second month. I reported on that on my 77-day report, and it's actually working quite well, received quite well. It's executing quite well, and we're looking at potentially scanning legal mail also. The Downtown Safety Patrol continues to deliver superior service throughout Cuyahoga County, not just limited to Cleveland. In the past few weeks, we've had a number of requests from other cities, and we've responded to those and mobilized that unit to support those requests. Initial budget request was made pursuant to discussions with the executive, council, and staff, and it's a roadmap to the way forward for the sheriff's department. And that budget is in the executive's recommended biannual budget on page 71. That request was in there. Budgetary restraints are a reality of our world, and it requires us to sometimes phase in resources based on need and function. And that's something I'm working closely with the executive and his staff, with the chief of staff particularly, to identify needs, supporting functions, and how we can triage and integrate those needs and accomplish those. As an example, just give you a couple examples here. There are 2 investigators in narcotics, following up on narcotics investigations from the jail. They've handled nearly 400 cases this year. Astronomical amount. And that number is likely to increase because of the K-9s detecting contraband at the entry facility. When an inmate comes back from court, there will be a K-9 scan. Why? Because that's a vulnerability. That's exposure for us. Every single person coming into the facility, there'll be a K-9 scan. Why? Because every single person should have the same security protocol, whether it's the sheriff, a correction officer, a sergeant, the warden, the elevator man, or someone working for, man or woman, or someone working from Public Works, or someone from Trinity Food, et cetera. Expansion of the electronic monitoring unit program. That does reduce housing in the correctional facility, increases court flexibility. Electronic monitoring unit, you'll see in my slides here in a minute, we'll talk about those, but I want you to please understand, and I'll mention this again, that unit is responsible for over 600 people who are being monitored. When they cut, and I didn't say if, when they cut, because it does happen, there's a decision to be made by the deputies responding. If there's a cut in Shaker Heights and there's another cut in Middleburg Heights, they have to make a decision where they're going to go. At that moment, if there is another, they violated an exclusion zone, in other words, maybe the individual had a situation with a domestic partner and they are not allowed in that area, there's a protection order in place, and they violate that geographically, the monitor sends an alert. So now we have three things on the board we have to respond to. Responding to those is critical. Triaging those is critical. Being able to respond to those effectively is going to put us in the best position, because that's where the liability and the exposure exists for the department. Judges request an increase in the courthouse, in the court towers, no less than 12 deputies to have a full complement there, to be able to have appropriately staffed courtrooms, which leads to more efficient judicial operations. Local municipalities are requesting support in various capacities on a regular basis, something we have to support. Warrant service increases needed to clear outstanding warrants, which results in a safer community and a more efficient legal system. Safer jails, safer community leads to economic development. And that's something that we are focused on, and we've made a PowerPoint here to walk through our department so I can explain a little bit more to you where we stand and what the vision was to move forward. So without further ado,
So before you start the PowerPoint.
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to note for the record that Councilwoman Simon is now in attendance.
Councilwoman? Start with our mission statement. Not going to read the whole thing word for word. You can read it for yourselves. But just a few key words there. Caretaker of the public's trust is important. Obviously, efficient and effective delivery of safety services. We also know that those in our custodial care, we have to have the right programs in place, because core component to corrections, custody, care, and control. Custody, care, and control. Care is in the center there. Care is the center of balance. It is our responsibility. I was up in the correctional center a few weeks ago and spoke to a new oncoming class of trainees, and one thing that I stressed to them was, we are not judge, jury, and executioner. People in our facility are in our care until they move on to the next step of the legal system. Treated accordingly, due respect, professionally, but important for us to maintain that care. And that's critical. So I want to just mention those words. You can read the rest at your convenience. Next slide speaks to the Ohio Revised Code 311.07, general powers and duties of the sheriff. Sheriff shall preserve public peace, cause all persons guilty of any breach of the peace within the sheriff's knowledge, a lot more to it, you know. So public peace is first. I mention that because, as in any legal document, the things that are mentioned earlier on in a document have more weight and certainly have more credence. When you look at a packet of ingredients on a box of food or bag of food, what is it? The first ingredient, there's more of the first ingredient than there are the others. First thing, public peace. Second, commit such persons to jail. The sheriff is in charge of the jail. That's it. Job one, day one, I got it. Jail. 2, execute warrants, writs, and other processes. We'll talk about these a little further in the PowerPoint, but just important that that is well noted. Warrants, and then there's other processes that the civil division does that a lot of people have no idea what they do. Upon the Court of Common Pleas, Court of Appeals, Probate Court, we have 4 court facilities we're responsible for. We're all very familiar with the Court of Common Pleas in the Justice Center Tower. We have Lakeside Courthouse, Juvenile Court, and Courthouse Square. 4 separate facilities that we must staff and support. and may participate as director of an organized crime task force under the ORC, ... There's more to that. Bottom line is that partnering with other agencies within the county and around the state is something that the sheriff obviously participates in also. It speaks to some of our functions. Okay, just a quick population comparison. Y'all may be aware, compared to the other most populous counties in Ohio, and Cuyahoga County 1.2, just behind Franklin County. So that's certainly speaks to our size. I think you're familiar with that. Basic deputy sheriff comparison, Cuyahoga and Franklin County. I will add a little bit of more context to this. Franklin County does have a established road patrol that we don't have, and that's okay. There are differences, important for you to know. They do contract with some cities within Franklin County and provide police services to those on a 24/7 911 response basis, and we don't do that. So that could be a slight difference for certainly the patrol, but the others, I'm showing these numbers more to show you the amount of work that our staff does and how proud I am of the work that our staff does in all our realms. Next slide speaks to the transports per month by the Sheriff's Department for the last 3 years and the kind of runs that they do, but just important to see how high that is. How much work comes out of that field operations unit. And to see the nature of the calls, whether they're to go to the Jane Edna Hunter, whether they're emergency runs, might be a hospital detail, or call for service at the Justice Center. Speaking of which, this morning, one of our court security officers detected a firearm in the purse of a person who was going to go to court today. They had a court date today, and this young lady had a firearm in her purse and went to the Justice Center, handed her purse over to the court security officer who ran through the x-ray machine. Again, the system works because we detected that. And obviously, when we have one of these alerts, we go on high alert everywhere else because it could be a ploy, it could be something, you know, et cetera. But just so you're aware of that does happen and the system does work. Prisoner transport comparison, hospitals, emergency runs, medical appointments. Here's a very rough comparison, but it's certainly staggering numbers by comparison, Cuyahoga County to the other counties. Now, I will tell you a little more context to this. As you are aware, Cuyahoga County contributes the majority of inmates to the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Control. So having such a high contribution, we have a lot of throughput here, and we'll talk a little bit later about violence. But we have a lot of throughput here in our county, so therefore our jail is obviously full, roughly 1,600 inmates, and people need to go places. But that just shows you, just to illustrate to you the amount of work that we do in support of that. Electronic monitoring unit, Facebook post, and you can look it up. It's online. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this and a little more detail about them. I spoke about them earlier in my introductory statement. And it's important to note we have 12 deputies and 2 sergeants assigned there. The job that they do is phenomenal, working closely with Judge Midday primarily and others, not only domestic violence but other cases. And their response level and the familiarity that these deputies have with the people who are on electronic monitoring. And that also works towards the success of the program, because the deputies get to know the family, the situations, they know the guy's going through a breakup, those things. So when situations do arise, they can address those appropriately with the appropriate amount of context. Just a terrific job being done there. Electronic monitoring by comparison. Cuyahoga, Franklin, and Hamilton County. Not to get caught up in it, but in Cuyahoga County, again, we have over 600 people who are in electronic monitoring. Franklin County has 100. Big difference there, slight decrease in numbers. They have 8 members, and God bless you. And Hamilton County has 21 deputies. Now, they have closer to 600. The difference is, particularly Franklin and Cuyahoga, our system is active, meaning active alerts that someone violated a exclusion zone, active alert that someone cut the bracelet. The other systems are passive, a little bit different, kind of after the fact, event reconstruction, not as critical to have a response. So just to, again, how staffing has lined up over the years for different departments, different agencies. Not always a apples to apples, but certainly puts it in the ballpark. We're comparing fruit to fruit. Courtroom comparison. Obviously, we have 34 common police judges in the courts tower. Hamilton County has 21 judges, a little bit less draw there. But it's also important to note, just as an example, when I worked in courts many years ago, obviously each judge has their own flow, how they run the court and how they do things. There's always the arraignment room. Every day, the arraignment goes on. But then some judges have there's different rhythm to it. It's important that the deputies know the rhythm to the floor and to the judge. And having the right amount of deputies there certainly enhances that, and it makes for a much smoother operation in the court. Extraditions. Again, our numbers are significantly higher than the others because, for whatever reason, this is for another meeting probably, the numbers are significantly high in Cuyahoga County of offenders. Cuyahoga County detectives from the Sheriff's Detective Bureau have conducted 250 extraditions to date. Now, some of those could be drive to Pittsburgh in the morning, pick up the guy, come back to the jail tonight, no problem. Some could mean fly to Houston and pick him up. 250 to date. There are 7 detectives in the Detective Bureau. So that certainly speaks to the volume of work that goes on there, and, compared to others, and that's just a reality of our world. I deal in reality, real lives saved. The others, they just have different realities, different makeups there. Average SWAT calls per month.
Question on that point.
Oh, yes.
The extradition to date, is that from your administration, start date? The 250 trips?
Since January 1st of this year, ma'am.
Thank you.
Average SWAT call-outs per month for 22 and 23. As you can see, this year, there's obviously a spike. I believe during 22, we were recovering from the COVID, which may have put a small damper on it, but business is certainly up, and these municipalities are calling for assistance that we have to render. Next slide speaks to offender registrations. Again, we look at Cuyahoga County, we certainly are above the others, sex offender being the highest, and I believe that Cuyahoga County is the highest in the state, and I believe that the city of East Cleveland is one of the highest, if not the highest contributor to that in the sexual offender realm. As you know, violent offenders are also now required to register, just like sexual offenders were. So that certainly tasks our operation. Arson and also people with animal abuse is important. Councilwoman Simon, I understand that you were responsible for some of that, and that's important, very important. I don't know if the Dick Goddard law plays into that, but certainly important that we know that these categories are there, and they're high in our county, regrettably. But again, it shows the work of offender registration when we talk to people doing some of the administrative work. Next slide, civil staffing, civil division. What we do here, just comparison to other counties, just the amount of people. And some have like a different mixture to them. As an example, Franklin County, as you see, doesn't have the manager rank because they use police or deputy sergeants to handle that function. But it just kind of illustrates to you how the numbers stack up there. And there's a lot that takes place there, and I will get to that here in one second. And all of that is mandated in the ORC. And the next slide here speaks to tax delinquency, sales, evictions, subpoenas, temporary protection orders. All of these things obviously are part of the civil workload, and judging by comparison to the other counties, you can see that our sheriff's department and our staff here is doing an incredible job with, obviously we already looked earlier at the numbers and the amount of work coming in. And gotta go back one. Civil document service, this also speaks to that. It's just a spike. Explanation I was given was that COVID put a damper on things, so that's why 22 was lower, and in 23, numbers certainly increased. Recommended staffing. There was a professional study conducted by the University of Akron, Dr. Mark Leichhardt, I believe, who assessed the Sheriff's Department in 2019. And I don't know if this study was brought before council before, but the numbers that I provided, which are in the executive's recommended biannual budget, page 71, actually pretty close to mirror this study. It was prior to me coming across this study. And the numbers, the deployment might be a little bit different, just slightly from what I envisioned, but it shows kind of what's necessary in order to optimize service delivery across the sheriff's department, particularly on the deputy side. And I'll speak to some of that here in a minute. Okay, now we get into staffing levels. My apologies, I have to turn to my other document here. All right. This is as of pay 22. Just kind of breaks down the entire department for you. Roughly 125 vacancies department-wide, kind of where we stand. Before we get to that, corrections officers, very proud of the fact that we are trending upwards in the hiring, recruitment of correction officers. And that number is going on an absolute good trend for us. As we know, increasing the number of staff in the correctional facility allows all to share the workload, impacts mandatory overtime. It's good for the budget, and it's good for morale, good for work-life balance. We just have to continue on that track. We did a really good job with the hiring fairs that we've had. However, we have to be cognizant that everyone who is a qualified candidate is not a suitable candidate. And certain jobs just aren't for everybody. Everybody's not an airplane pilot. Everyone is not a brain surgeon. It's not for everyone. Again, may be qualified, but not suitable, and some people don't stay. So there has been some movement there. However, overall, we're trending in the right direction. So we're going to refocus our recruitment efforts in the correctional facility to make sure that we boost that up and we are able to maintain this track all the way to our number. I show this picture here just to show you, to illustrate the dangers of what can be in the jail. This is a homemade shank. As you can see, you've probably seen millions of these in pictures in different places, movies, and everything else, but it's the reality of what our people face. It's the reality of what exists there and what these people will do to go ahead and, obviously defend themselves or cause harm on others, whichever way you look at it. But it's a danger to those working in the facility. And again, that was discovered as a part of the newly reinstituted jail shakedowns. They used to be a regular thing, and then for staffing and various reasons, they kind of got away from it or just weren't able to do them as much as possible. So last couple of weeks, we reinstituted those, and there's some of the findings. Next picture here, this just shows a dumpster with a bunch of uniforms and blankets and stuff in it. As you know, inmates are not allowed to have excess amounts of variety of things, whether it's uniforms or shoes or blankets or towels, etc. And that is something that when the staff went in to do the jail shakedown and search through the jails, here's what they found. And this is just one picture. There's many of these. Just to give you an example, this looks like just trash. Many inmates, because sometimes when food is late or food, they go to court, they come back, they get food in a styrofoam container. So these were all amassed in the facility, in the cells. The other issue with this is if the cell has a lot of external food in it and containers of food and odds and ends, it makes the canines less effective when they go in to search for drugs. So we need to clean that out and establish order that we are not going to hoard and have additional or an over amount of things you shouldn't have. Called contraband. Whether it's garbage or uniforms or blankets, it's contraband or it's a weapon. Okay, and we move into the all funds for the Sheriff's Department. I think the important bullet here, I'm going to move one more. Law enforcement. Additional personnel cost for current staff, as you can see, is at $8 million. The second bullet speaks to the request that I crafted about 2 months ago, and that was as soon as I could get it together from when I came on, not knowing where we were in the budget cycle. That kind of fell in the middle of the budget cycle, so we had to introduce it there. So that's what the amount was. SWAT gear, additional ballistic shields, drones, et cetera, to do their job effectively. Handheld radio contract, that's something that was approved in 2022. Payment is every January for 5 years. That will be a static amount there. And in 25, as you can see, the same thing for current staffing. That is a shortage there in overtime, primarily overtime. And then the additional personnel costs would be including the numbers that I prepared in the budget for the recommendations that I made. And the handheld radio contract, we said that was static. So that is on the law enforcement side, that's where the budget is. Jail operations, a couple of key points here as we talk through it. Additional personnel costs, as we know, $10 million. Handheld radio contract, once again, approved in 2022, every January for 5 years. K-9 expansion, that's the K-9 program we've been speaking of, and that is going to save lives. And that is for the K-9s at the entry points and throughout the facility. Controlled, that just speaks to the space in the garage and public works kinds of numbers like that. Stab-proof vest for the correction officers, $250. I spoke to that earlier. I showed you a picture of the shank and the danger in there, and I think that it is prudent for our staff to be properly protected to do their duties we're asked them to do while in a correctional facility. That is a standard across the country for correction officers, and we should provide no less for our staff. And the key items for 25, let's keep in mind that COLA comes into play. We spoke of the radio contracts, the K-9 expansion. Sheriff operations. Operations includes the newly reformed Human Resources Unit, Fiscal, and the Civil Division, which is a very large division. We looked earlier at the slides of how much work they do, what they do, a significant amount of work there. Additional personnel costs are for adding, we're in the process of completing interviews for the administrative manager, the administrator, and we completed for the manager. And there's a few other positions that are open in the Sheriff's Human Resources. When I speak of those, everyone who works in those capacities, I think I've mentioned to the council before that I don't favor the term civilian. I use the term professional staff. We're either a deputy sheriff, or a correction officer, or a protective service officer, or we're professional staff. That's it. The term civilian I find to be somewhat demeaning by the uniformed forces for others who don't wear a badge and a gun, and I don't like to use that term, so we use professional staff. So. Protective services, actually, I kind of got ahead of myself there. Protective services, there we go. IPS maintenance contract, that's the camera system. That is the maintenance for the system, and that's a system that we continue to grow, optimize. Some cameras age out. Others are, we just need to refocus. We need to look at different areas. And many times a day, there's situations that occur throughout the county in various facilities, and we go back to see what's on the camera. So I think in today's day and age, we understand the criticality of the system. AlloCap software setup cost, that's a proposed program. It is a program which allows us to bill other back pay for other units, other entities, so they can see the breakdown of what they're paying for. Let's, as an example of HHS, we have protective service officers and deputy sheriffs in some facilities, and they could see exactly what they're being billed for, what the hours are, et cetera. So it's for use by everyone, so that's on the proposal there. Handheld radio contract, once again, approved in 2022 and due in December. And the same for 2025. CCW office, I think it continues as it has been. CCW, no major changes there. And I do want to mention one thing about the CCW. Even though the state law changed last June, there is still a significant number of people who come and obtain concealed carry permits, because even though Ohio constitutional carry takes place, being a concealed carry permit holder allows you to have reciprocity in other states. So if you get stopped in Utah or you get stopped in Colorado, if you have an Ohio concealed carry permit, then they accept the reciprocity. If you don't have that, it could be an issue in a state which probably would not be constitutional carry. Utah's probably not the greatest example, but commissary balances out the numbers here. The funds from commissary are used to pay, obviously, for Securus and Keefe. It kind of sustains itself, but it is the Sheriff's Department is a pass-through for that, as you cannot pay directly from inmate accounts. So that is the pass-through for that. And that is the last slide I have there. Open for questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Questions by my colleagues? And we're going to start with the chairman of the Public Safety and Justice Affairs Committee, Councilman Gallagher.
Sheriff, a couple things jumped off here, but the biggest thing that jumped off was the overtime. You want to go through that?
Yes, sir. In corrections or law enforcement?
All funds.
Okay, so we'll go to law enforcement corrections. I'm sorry, law enforcement overtime. For 2024, request was 5.4 and 25 was 5.7. This year, I think we're going to be close to about the same. So that was a request there. In jail operations, 2024, request was 11.8. 25 is projected 12.2. Currently, I believe we're passing the 14 million mark for 2023. Guess there could be some thought that additional staffing would have some reduction in the numbers in the jail. I don't know to what degree, but I do know that some additional staffing probably would have some reduction. That's likely.
But you don't see zero reduction.
No, sir.
See, that's my concern, is you're asking for overtime and it's been zeroed out.
Yeah, and I think that's something that certainly in close conversation with the executive's office, we'll have to see kind of where that is, or what the thought was on that.
Budget, I have great concerns about that. You're being handed, in essence, on the law enforcement side, yearly about a $5.5 million hand grenade. On the jail operations, that's about $6 million a year. And on your operations, it's a little bit lower, but how do we account for that?
Oh, yeah. Through the chair to the councilman, I don't have the exact answer for that, but I do know it's something as we approach that to work through.
Councilman Kelly, followed by Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff?
Yes, sir.
The drug dogs, how many do you have right now?
Through the chair to the councilman, inside the facility, sir?
Yes.
Inside the facility, we have 2 drug dogs.
And what would your recommendation be to have enough?
To add, through the chair to the councilman, to add 8 to that, a total of 10 drug dogs, which speaks to having 24/7 drug detection coverage at the main entrance, also at the tunnel coming back from courts, and also at the dock.
Would any of these, I mean, there's obviously an entrance to the jail for drugs. We know that. So, would any of these entry points also involve your employees, or would this be the people coming from outside that are using the facility, or how would that be?
Through the chair to the councilman, they would sniff anybody entering the secure zone, the correctional facility. So it will be every correction officer reporting for duty, myself walking in there to do a walkthrough, the warden coming to work, the public works person coming to work on a sink. Every single person entering the facility, including inmates, would be scanned. Also, Sally Port's another location. Entry point, Sally Port, main entry point, obviously, the tunnel and the dock.
Thank you for that. And then the electronic monitoring unit. You say you have 12 people on that unit?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, sir. 12 deputies and 2 sergeants assigned to the unit.
Okay, and that's 24/7, 7 days a week?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, sir.
Okay. And what would you need for that unit to make sure that you had proper staff in case there were multiple calls, or in the extent of domestic violence, exclusion zones, that the people out with the monitors on cannot enter, to make sure that you'd be able to have a proper response?
Through the chair to the councilman, easily doubling that number, which for the function that they do is not a lot, because it's a lot more than just monitoring. There's a misconception that they just sit there, wait for the bell to ring. There's a lot more that they do when they go out and check on people, speak with them, get to know the layout of the house, get to know the family. So there's a lot more to it, which speaks to the success of the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
We have Councilwoman Simon, followed by Ms. Conwell and Turner and Tron.
Thank you. Okay, I wanted to follow up with the dog questions. I know there's 2 basically living at the Justice Center. Yes?
Yes, through the chair to the councilwoman, yes, there are 2 who reside there. They have a nice setup there, pretty nice living room kind of setup there. Yes, ma'am.
So would it be the plan to put additional dogs in the same space?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, we had that discussion earlier, and no, we are not going to have 100 dogs living there. Some of those would have to be typical dogs where the canine handler would take them home with them, or we would have a program where we would give them a crate to crate them home. But yeah, they would not reside there. No, a crate just to drive them in, so we don't have the cost of a police car. But if we provide them a crate, a secure, safe crate, and maybe pay the handler some kind of a stipend, they could be responsible for their dog at home.
Yeah, so traditional police departments usually have an assigned handler to the dog, and they go home and they have a basic normal life, family life. Yeah. So if we're going to pursue this additional dog assignments, I would like those to be in that environment if possible.
Absolutely.
Instead of, I never liked the Justice Center situation, but I understand they're well cared for. It's just not ideal. They like it, right? They're used to it. But thank you. So you're going to let us know what the conclusion will be if you get the appropriation?
Absolutely. Through the chair, through the councilwoman, yes.
Okay, the cells filled with those garbage bags that you had on the slide, or the garbage bags that you retrieve from the cells. Why were those so en masse? Aren't those regularly looked at?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, there's a series of events probably that led up to that. It could be inmates, again, they're in trial, so they come back and their food isn't there, so they get the warm food in the styrofoam container and keep it there. I understand your question. Is that checked on a daily basis? That level of detail of an inspection is probably not conducted on a daily basis. A few of those could be just kept make it easy to eat cereal out of or something. It could be under a guy's pillow. So the officer who does the check, making sure everything's okay in the cell, is probably not doing an actual search of the cell just because of time constraints and other things. So those are the reasons, but that's why there was a need to have the shakedowns where you have a supervisor, lieutenant, and a series of officers who come in specifically to inspect each cell top to bottom.
So you anticipate that will be amped up a little bit before it gets to that? I don't know, because we just saw the garbage bags. I don't know how much is attributable to each cell, so I'm hoping it's not.
No, through the chair to the councilwoman,
Okay.
no, that was the result of, well, there was a lot of that, but it was a result of a few pods that they did, and not every cell in that pod. But by doing this, we're certainly establishing a level of order and a level of expectation with the officers and the inmates.
Okay. And you talked about the cities asking for patrol assistance.
Yes.
When you started. What cities other than the city of Cleveland have requested and received patrol support from our deputies?
To the chair, to the councilwoman, we had assistance in the city of Beechwood, city of Cleveland Heights, city of Independence, and there's one more on the west side I can't think of right now, but there's one more. Through the chair to the councilwoman, no, we did not have a request from East Cleveland.
So are these for events, like our impact unit was originally designed for?
Yes, through the chair to the councilwoman, yes, there were specific events, not necessarily to come and patrol our streets, help us out with an event. I received another request today from Richmond Heights. They're having vehicle break-ins. So we're going to use the cameras with system and maybe give them some manpower. But those kind of requests come in, nothing specific yet that says, hey, we need to patrol our streets for crime, nothing like that, more event-driven.
Is that what you're doing similarly in city of Cleveland as well? Or are you doing a broader patrol in the city of Cleveland?
The Cleveland, through the chair to the councilwoman, in the city of Cleveland, a downtown safety patrol was focused specifically on downtown due to the increased violence we experienced early in the summer, and that has now dissipated, and we're keeping that down.
Patrolling?
Yes.
Opposed to so it's different from that which has been requested from the communities outside of the city of Cleveland?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, partially yes, and the other part is Cleveland also has a lot of mass demonstrations and other things that they request assistance from, and that assistance is garnered from the Downtown Safety Patrol.
Okay. And one last question about the impact unit. We had that set up for those events throughout the county. Is that disbanded now, the impact unit? Are you familiar with that? I should ask you that first.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, yes, I am familiar with the impact unit. That was disbanded some years ago, just for a variety of reasons, staffing and other things. When we created the Downtown Safety Patrol, we kind of clawed at what we could throughout different units and put together the 8 deputies and the sergeant there. And that is how we got that off the ground. So we're using that as think of a de facto impact unit. If someone calls, we have them available. We'll repurpose them to go support that request.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Conwell is next, followed by Turner, Schron, and Sweeney.
Thank you. Through the chair to the sheriff, how does the sheriff's department assist currently with the Department of Children and Family Services?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, we assist at the Jane Edgar Hunter Center, not only with the protective service officers, but there's deputy sheriffs assigned there who, it's a very delicate balance there between the staff that's there, the protective service officers, and the deputy sheriffs. The idea is not to make this a police state. We'd like for them to reference at law enforcement presence as to an order-keeping force without having to really engage. And deputies and protective service officers do their best to not get involved in situations that are best handled by staff.
Okay. I know you've had conversations with the director in regards to at times there's high cases of cases of individuals, children that are in our care at the children's room at a given point in time. Has those where some of us feel, or staff for their safety feel that, there should be a correction officer's presence. Have you had conversations with the director to work on those issues?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I have not had any discussion about a corrections officer presence. And also, in the children's room, we try to limit deputies or PSOs from involvement there. Many of those situations with the children are best dealt with staff unless they tend to be an extreme situation, which would require law enforcement presence.
And they'll intervene at that time?
Yes, if it was something extreme, yes.
Okay, because right before you came, we did not have the transport of the sheriff's department. I worked on that with the previous sheriff and the previous director at that time. So that's going good because sometimes, the children can create a community issue being in a car with a caseworker. So.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Councilwoman Turner is next, followed by Schron and Sweeney.
Thank you. Through the chair. How you doing, Sheriff?
Great, Councilman, yourself.
Because we know that there's no I in team, I was wondering if those that you have brought with you today could come forward and tell us their name and their area of responsibility.
Absolutely. Team, please.
Come on down. The next contestant. Tell us your name, how long you've been with the county, and your area of responsibility, please.
My name is Aaron Reese. I started with the county on September 11th. I am the chief deputy. I'm in charge of law enforcement operations.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council. My name is Donna Khalil. I'm the finance manager for the sheriff's department, overseeing most of the budget and procurement and pretty much anything that is finance related. I've been with the county now a little over 16 years.
Good afternoon, council. My name is Jay Hodge. I've been with the county since February 13th, and I'm charged as captain over protective services as well as physical security.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Peters. I've been with the Sheriff's Department 33 years. I currently supervise the electronic monitoring unit, the civil division, our training division for continuing professional training, our internal affairs unit, and offender unit.
Chris Costin. I've been with the Sheriff's Department since 2022, but with the county since 2009. I worked directly under Donna Khalil as a business administrator for.
Jim Mackey, captain. Been with the Sheriff's Departments for about 17 years now, and I have the criminal investigation divisions.
Kendra Zuzzi, business administrator with the sheriff. Worked for the county 33 years, 1 year with the sheriff.
Good afternoon, Michelle Henry. I am the warden at the Correction Center, and I joined the team in 2020.
Well, thank you. You have assembled an amazing group of superheroes. I know your job is difficult, so I just wanted to thank you publicly for all that you do for us. And a quick question, sir, you started off talking about changing culture. And I was wondering what metrics do you utilize to determine if you're making any progress in that area?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, thank you for inviting the team out. That was great having them introduce themselves. I like hearing that, and you see kind of what areas are represented, and there's many more to that. So, your question about the changing culture. Culture obviously is somewhat amorphous to a lot of people. They don't really see, but when we talk about law enforcement agencies, correctional facilities, and changing culture, a lot of differences. Number one, how we treat each other, how we treat people we work with, meaning whether it's the public or inmates, et cetera, and how we practice not just equitable treatment throughout the entire department, how we practice selection of different positions, of different personnel. And I think that procedural justice is probably paramount to it all, because we cannot ask our people who work for us to practice procedural justice with the public or with the inmate population if we don't practice procedural justice within our own ranks. The metrics for that is the two things. One, ongoing surveying of people. Entry, and that survey includes entry level when they first come in, also exit interviews, but ongoing surveys in between. And also, something people have not done is when they're surveyed in a new position. When someone is newly assigned to, let's say, the laundry or somewhere else, we should survey them because they come from somewhere else. The culture in the laundry may be very different than the culture in the kitchen. So that's important that the culture for the entire department is the same. The culture in electronic monitoring may be very different than the culture in courts. And again, that is something that I and my staff drive down, is equitable treatment of our people. Equitable treatment of people at every turn. And that is something that we're going to make a core competency for down the road here. There's union issues and all, but promotions is something we should consider. Because how have we effectuated that in our realm of responsibility is very important to me.
Thank you for sharing. Yield back.
Okay. Councilman Schwan and then Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I know that my colleague, Mr. Gallagher, asked about the overtime, but when looking at the budget, nothing makes sense to me as far as what's going on this. But how was your budget created? You heard some other folks testify that it was handed to them based on cost of living and things of that nature. How was your line item allocation created?
Through the chair to the chair to the councilman, I'm unsure how most of it was created. I submitted a request based on previous discussions of where we were going, and I don't know if the timing of that request into the budget cycle, because it seems like the budget was distilled from the previous year's budget with some changes to it, not significant, but I do know that the changes, that the request that I made was received, and I've had extensive discussion with the executive and certainly with the chief of staff to look to make some of those things come true. They were not reflected here today, but I have a commitment that that is something we're going to move forward on, because that's where the department needs to move, and I think that may have been a matter of timing when that was submitted.
What do you mean it's not reflected? I mean, the column that says your request for 2024 is not your number?
Are you on law enforcement, sir? Or?
It doesn't matter. All three of them got the same.
Yes.
I'm gonna be able to flip the slides and go through all three of them.
Yes, CCSD requested, yes, that is my number.
Okay, so when you said it was not reflective, it is reflective. I was hoping you're gonna bring your budget person up because I assume we're gonna get there eventually.
Okay.
I mean, the purpose of these hearings are budget hearings. They're not to talk about your operations and all the other kind of stuff unless it's directly related to the budget side. So let's try and figure out where your number comes from on this 2024 and 2025, because when I'm looking at it, your number is off from the county executives by well over 20% on law enforcement. You're off 15% on the difference between and jail operations, and your sheriff's operations itself is 30% difference. I mean, in total, when you get down to grand total.
Let me look at the
Unless I'm missing something, it is, okay. You show a delta on, I'm just talking 2024. I mean, these are off dramatically. And if you go back to 2023, I assume 2023 is almost ended. So correct. Those numbers should be pretty rock solid, I would assume. Are they?
Yeah,
so,
yes,
so
they
we
are.
take that we're almost projected out and say that's what we're going to look like for 2024 or 2023.
Through the chair to the councilman, they're going to explain a couple things on here, but I do want to preface it with one thing. The biggest delta I have here was the initial request that I made, which I referenced the biennial budget, was the 90 deputy request. That in and of itself, it was 90 deputies, 2 lieutenants, 4 sergeants. That request caused the biggest difference here. Everything else, I think, has been adjusted somewhat since 2023 or 22, and certainly Donna and Chris can speak to that. But that was my recommendation, to make some additional moves and create different things within the department, and that's something that, in frequent conversation with the executive and his staff, we're going to move in that direction. Just have to parse it out and see what stages we can do what. Can't do it all overnight. There's not a magic wand, so that's why that causes the biggest concern, because I did submit that and it's officially in the record. So that is a desire to go there. That is optimal. We're just not budgeting for that at this moment.
The $10 million difference on salary for law enforcement.
Correct.
Is the request you made, and it was made prior to the creation of the executive's recommendation?
I am unsure when that was created. I know that was probably my, going into my second month here. And at that point, I knew kind of where we were going, so I sent it in. So that's the part that I'm unsure of. But as far as creating the budget, I think Donna and Chris can speak a little more to how the budget is created.
Good afternoon, Council. So my understanding, when the budget is created, initially they look at pay period 12, and then they take pay period 12 and they extend it out for the year, and that's how they initially create the budget. They base it on the staffing levels through pay period 12, and they base it on pretty much what the personnel costs and other things like, our Metro Health contract, things like that. But as the year goes on and the holidays hit and things like that, it does increase quite a bit. But that's how it's originally built. And also things like, you'll see the handheld radios year after year is in there. The reason it is because that it was approved in 22, and we got the funding in 23, but they base a lot of their other costs, I call it other costs, which is non-personnel, on the 22 budget. So the handheld radios were not in there in 22, and that's why we continue to ask for it now year after year, because it's a 5-year contract. But again, personnel cost was based on pay period 12. Now, Chrissy spent many, many years at OBM, so do you want to add anything to that?
Going back, and Donna hit on it, and Sheriff hit on it as
Could
well.
you introduce yourself for the
Chris
record?
Costin, Sheriff's Department. The base budget and how the system really works, and other agencies touched on it, we are given a base budget from OBM. We look at it, we make our recommendations to OBM, OBM submits to the executive, then it comes down to the executive recommended budget. If you look at the columns on every slide that we put together, that is based on our projections for 23. We did have our third quarter projection meetings with OBM, and we're pretty much in line, off maybe $1 million between our projections and OBM's projections. The base budget and the recommended budget, there's a big variance. And if you look on each slide, for example, on law enforcement, the key items that we put together are not included in the base budget or recommended budget. And we touch on these points. The additional personnel cost for current staff is for the staff we have right now. We are projecting a shortfall, for example, for law enforcement, $8.4 million. The sheriff is requesting an additional 90 deputies. That's going to cost an additional $9.5 million above the executive recommended budget. The SWAT gear, he touched on SWAT gear, the handheld radio contract. We have it on contract already. It's not included in this budget, and it goes slide by slide the same way.
So that the county executive did not factor your recommendations in when they came forward with their recommendation for the 2024-2025 budget.
Looking at these numbers, that is correct. We recommended.
I mean, this is a waste of everybody's time for this not to be a realistic information. If you need 90 people to do your job, then it should be based in here, and then the county executive should figure out how we're going to pay for it. I mean, or we don't put the 90 people in. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of a simple math guy, and if he's not in favor of your 90 people, then you have to accept the fact that that's going to take place. If he is in favor of it, then let's get these numbers so they make sense.
But even without the 90 people, take our recommended was 212 with the 90. Even without the 90, you take 10 million out of there, 9.5, we're still significantly ahead of what the recommended budget is.
Well, then I'm going to come back and challenge you, because the 2023, you said, is almost a realistic number as far as our expenses.
Correct. The 2023, which we're in agreement with OBM on, we're probably looking at about a total of 185 million, give or take.
Yeah, and you're saying that the county executive should have been based off of pay period 12.
Well, not that it should have been, that's how they do it. You asked me,
Okay, hold on a minute. Please direct the questions and the answers through the chair.
Okay, through the chair. The projected budget is based on where we currently have a snapshot of where we're probably going to be for this year.
Correct.
And through the chair.
The 2023 projected, correct.
That's correct. So that should be a real number.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And pay period 12, through the chair, should be what the county executive's number should be.
Wait, so.
The county executive's recommendation in the next column over, it should be based on pay period 12, is what you.
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, that is correct.
I'm confused as to why those aren't very close. I mean, they're close enough. I guess, we're within striking distance, I guess, in government jargon, $2 million. But it still seems like those ought to be a hell of a lot closer, those two numbers.
But then going to 24 through the chair to the councilman, you got to remember, we have, I think, 13 bargaining units. Everybody's getting a 3% raise. So that's one of the reasons why the increase is so significant from the 185 million we're projecting this year to where we think we're going to be next year.
So through the chair, then it's kind of disappointing the county executive has to be aware of those contracts. They have to be aware of the cost of living. Why isn't it reflected in the county executive's 2024 recommendation? It just seems to me that, we all know those have already taken place. That should be a simple math, again, through the chair, just to multiply that to make sure that those two numbers should look pretty damn close, plus the cost of living in the contracts. I mean, the 34 million ought to reflect those things, it seems to me, through the chair, automatically. They should be calculated in the county executive's number.
Through the chair to the councilman, I agree. And I think one of the things hurting us is the overtime. They did take out a lot of our overtime. This year overtime alone is projected at 20 million, and I think we're going to get 8 million in overtime through the entire sheriff's department. So right there, that's a big hunk of it right there, which will probably be in the same boat next year at this time as we are right now this year.
Okay, well, through the chair, I'll let Mr. Gallagher's already, that's his hot button, so I'll let him pick up on that one. Mine is just the rest of the core of the document. It just seems to me that here we are, we spent an hour on this, and just crazy, these numbers don't seem to make any sense as to what we're doing here, and we're going to come back, it seems to me, and re-examine all this, your entire budget from scratch, because it doesn't look like it holds.
Excuse me,
candle.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
My questions were kind of like yours. Which is, you're laughing because we usually
it's
end
only a
up,
matter who goes first. You
Yeah.
know, we're going to get to the same question, the two of us usually.
which lends to Mr. Gallagher's questions.
Yeah, that's all I have to say, other than that this is kind of a disappointing hour to me, to be honest, as far as what we spent. And it's not your fault, other than this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Thank you.
Councilman Sweeney is next, followed by Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, welcome.
Afternoon, sir.
Did we, you asked to serve in this particular capacity, right?
Through the council, to the chair, the councilman, yes, sir.
And we approved you, right, as a subject matter expert in regards to the sheriff?
Through the chair, to the councilman, yes, sir.
And when we were going through the confirmation process, I asked you, are you going to run this sheriff department and it's going to be on you?
Through the chair, to the councilman, yes, sir, it is.
And through the chair, and this is the budget, your budget that you submitted to us is what you need, no fat, to make it work the way it should work.
Through the chair, to the councilman, what I need is reflected here, and obviously there has to be a workup to get to that, and that's the conversation that I'm going on with the executive staff.
Yeah, and I've heard a couple times through the chair, I've been here 3 years, and that zeroing out for the overtime, we did that 2 years ago. And it's nuts in my eyes. And everybody else uses different, and we're going to work it out and we're going to catch up to it. And sometimes it's on not staffing something or this or that. But it doesn't make any sense. You have real hard request numbers that can be validated through your time.
Yes, through the chair, to the councilman, yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's like a recipe for not success. And you're in a very unique position through the chair of the only entity that's through the Ohio Revised Code, I know the Inspector General has appointed and by the executive and removed by council. So you're in a unique position. And we've talked about the jail through the chair and the sheriff's department, the office of the sheriff, for the entire time I've been here. And you're taking it upon yourself to make it work. And this budget, it comes up short in your eyes.
Through the chair, to the councilman, reflect short. However, the conversations I had with the executive staff, chief of staff, indicate that as we move forward, we'll triage what would be the most appropriate use of X amount of deputies, the first 10 or first 20, and we'll look at adding those on incrementally so we can get to these numbers.
And through the chair, there's no real, by Tuesday, we're gonna do this. By in a month and a half, we're gonna get to this threshold. Right now, it's just theoretical, we're gonna do it, but no real game plan that can be executed. Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilman, the game plan is that we have regular meetings on this so we can show what the function of those deputies would be and where we can locate that funding from to make that a reality. As an example, if we need 12 for electronic monitoring, we'd make that discussion and we'd meet to see where that funding could come from. And then maybe the following month, we'd look to see, well, courts needs another 12, how do we do that, et cetera.
Through the chair to my sheriff, I don't like the word maybe. I have to ask, I have to prove. You're the subject matter expert. We've hired you to do this job. And the resources are finite, we know that. But what's your, through the chair, by the Ohio Revised Code, what's your responsibility? Safety and well-being of
public safety, and certainly everything else that comes underneath it, from the courts to the corrections to the civil, et cetera.
No, but in the Ohio Revised Code, the sheriff department must or shall,
Very, very clear. Preserve the public peace.
preserve the public peace. That's one of the core, this is the core responsibility of the citizens' tax dollars. Safety and service. That's when I ran for council way back when, and it hasn't changed. So I'm looking through the chair and through this council to get more of a concrete game plan. And you're very generous by saying you're going to work towards it. But if it doesn't work, it's going to fall on you.
Through the chair of the council, and that is correct. That is a discussion that I've had, again, with the executive staff, and I'm confident that we all have the same mission in mind. I know that the executive has the same views as how we're going to address public safety in various realms with the use of the sheriff's department, and I think his vision is in concert with the vision that we proposed, just a matter of how we get there.
Yeah, and I agree, because during Chris's campaign, he was spot on this, and it works with you, but how we get there. And I'm looking forward to helping it along. And through the chair, I have a really small one, because we're talking heavy stuff. 2 years ago, do you have a notary public inside the jail or inside the sheriff's department through the chair?
Through the chair of the councilman, yes.
Thank you, because a gentleman came in, he couldn't get it notarized, couldn't get upstairs, couldn't get the paper down, and it was an inmate's ability to get out of jail was dependent on that. And I'm very thankful that there's a notary public in there as a basic function of your operation. So those are my comments. I look forward to working with you. And at the end of the day, this council is going to pass a budget, and you'll have that responsibility. But don't be shy to come back and say, to the administration, absolutely. But keeping the chairman, I love him being our safety chair. So thank you, Mr. President, or Mr. Chairman.
Councilwoman Stevens, Madam Vice President, is next, followed by Gallagher.
I had both of my colleagues whispering in my ears almost simultaneously. Could I concede to Councilwoman Simon, because I couldn't hear what she was asking me to ask?
Okay, thank you. I might have to step out. So I just had a question about preserving the peace. Thank you. That's not well defined necessarily to go into other jurisdictions and diverting our own central deputies and staff to go into other jurisdictions that already should have the ability to maintain their own peace, correct?
Through the chair, to the councilwoman, our jurisdiction is Cuyahoga County, so it's countywide, all 58 municipalities. So going outside of that, I guess would be as if there was a request from Lorain County, they're going to have some boating event, they want some assistance. I think we could look at it that way.
I'm talking more about your patrol in the city of, and I'm sorry to cut you off, I might have to run out, but the City of Cleveland patrol program, yes. How do you justify taking, a shortage that we already see with evidenced by our overtime, and then taking men and women off duty to go patrol in Cleveland? First of all, who asked to do that? Was that a request of Cleveland? Was that your idea? How did that come to be?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, that was a two process. One, it was my idea. Second, the Cleveland Police did ask for assistance with downtown, and the justification for that is the fact that we made downtown safer. There have not been aggravated shootings and homicides downtown since the inception of that unit. So
well, haven't we had the state of Ohio come in as well with DeWine? DeWine came in and his, flotilla, and so we can't attribute the shift necessarily to your unit, right?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, that is attributed directly to the Downtown Safety Patrol, because the Highway Patrol and the other units doing the work are doing it in the neighborhoods, whereas the Downtown Safety Patrol is focused on downtown specifically, on the core specifically, with the few exceptions when they were called for other cities.
I'm going to defer to my colleague, Councilwoman Stevens, to talk and ask you, I hope, about the city of East Cleveland that essentially is replete with staffing and the ability to maintain what they need to do, and would hope that she follows up with questions about why we're not there. Thank you.
So obviously several of us are having similar ideas. As you know, as everybody who can read knows, East Cleveland has major issues. One of the most major is the lack of public safety in the community. I know that you have been reached out, that the county exec has been reached out to, as have I. But it appears that there has been no plan for direct aid to them. Is that correct?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I am unaware of that. I have, the only contact I had was with one of the council persons from East Cleveland, and I informed that statutorily, that request from assistance from the sheriff, specific request, should come from the chief of police or the mayor of the city, not from a council.
That's what we both know. Unfortunately, we have not had a reach from either the mayor or the safety director / chief of police. Okay. That is of great concern. On Friday night, I met with several constituents who did not feel safe in their own homes. And so the fact that you're looking ahead to try and be proactive in those areas is important to me. But back to the budget. These numbers don't quite work for 3 or 4 of us, maybe more. Okay, so I think I have a quorum on lack of understanding on how we get a budget document that outlines something that doesn't even cover the agreed upon union agreement increases for the deputies and all of the other staff people. Did you not ask leadership about making sure we covered at least those in the recommended budget?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I'm not familiar with how that part of the budget was created. As I understand, it is a replication of the previous year's budget, probably some adjustments, and I think that my staff would probably know more about that part. How they create that at OBM or anywhere else, I'm not exactly certain on the process for that.
Director Karfiowicz.
Excuse me, Director, through the chair. Typically, when you have a budget, we'd all love for them to be replicates of the prior year. That means that we could pay everything in them before we even started tax collections. But that is not so. Therefore, when we have agreed to new amounts in contracts, shouldn't the future year reflect at a minimum those agreed upon in contract amounts?
Councilwoman, yes, that is the case. That
Director,
they
if you
should.
could state your name for the record
I'm
and speak
sorry.
directly into the microphone, please.
I'm sorry, Walter Parfiowicz, Budget Office Director.
You forget, since we all know you up here, you forget that the voting public doesn't always know who you are.
Yes, I apologize for that. Let's just talk about these union increases. The union increases that were included in this budget amount to about $1 million. They were included in the budget. In fact, the budget has 40 additional corrections officers in it than what we're on pay at pay 12. Additionally, there's additional funding in here for the Trinity Food contract of about $3 million. There's $2 million in the budget for for Metro Health, for jail medical. There's also about $2 million in here for controlled costs, things that basically chargebacks from the county. And there's about $1 million in CBA adjustments as well. So let me just go through the process real quick. We have to start somewhere, so we start at pay 12, which is typically the first pay in June. And on that pay, the sheriff's office had 1,084 staff. So 1,084 staff were budgeted for. And in addition to that 1,084, we added 40 additional COs. So that's what the budget is built on.
So, excuse me, Mr. Chair, to the director, overtime, direct staffing issue.
Yes.
We have spent close to $20 million year to date.
Right.
And we're reducing it to $8 million, and we think that the $40 million, I don't see I'm sorry, it's not $40 million, it's 40 officers.
Right. So we added the 40 officers, and we did put in the overtime number.
But my 40 officers don't see much of an increase in the baseline salaries. $300,000 won't cover 40 officers.
Oh, no,
It's just a prayer for the 40.
the 40 officers, we added 2,467,000.
In what line item?
I'm not sure how it's portrayed there. This is in the aggregate.
Okay, so you see how, I do math fairly well. I even did budgets for this county back in the day when we were both babies. But the reality is, I can't figure out where this 40-person increase is when they're not our lowest salaries. And my overtime number is down. And my fringes is only up a little bit. And my control costs are down. This is where we get crazy. Several of us, our numbers, like to think we can do large budgets and have been on council long enough to be able to give people a fair shot at this. And this is the place that we get scared. We even lose friendships among each other on this jail thing. So you have got to give us numbers that we can follow so that we can help the county get forward to a better place. And this isn't even where we're arguing at. This is getting you to a budget that we think this county can live with, so we have less abuse, less problems, fewer issues in the operation of the safety and people who have violated safety and public trust. We have got to get numbers that get us to the place so we're not arguing about this. We have our arguments about something else.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I agree with you. I believe what you have there in your recommended budget book is exactly what we've said it is. It's a county executive recommended budget, but I think our issue that we're talking about here is a true reconciliation between our numbers and the sheriff's numbers. And I think the biggest items here are going to be the sheriff's computations for his 90 additional deputies, I believe. They are not in this budget. And his overtime numbers, which are going to be significantly higher than ours.
Mr. Chair, to the director and sheriff, we would hope that y'all would come to us with a recommendation that allows us to more or less tweak a little bit, but agree with you in general. We like to agree with the executive. It is not our mission to disagree with him. And so when we have a sheriff who works and reports to the executive, we would like to see them be closer numbers, because we know that things evolve. There are problems that happen between the time you first do budget numbers and the time that the directors and folks like the sheriff appear before us. So if we saw a 10% difference between the two of them, we might be okay, but this is larger than 10%, and it's significant in how it operates when you're talking about 40 new sheriff deputies as opposed to 90. So how do we get to a closer place where we believe the executive understands what we want? We've heard the sheriff talk about a potential schedule for increases. Are you telling, we'd like to hear from a representative of the administration that there is a schedule, that they do believe it can be achieved, and you're projecting an increase in our revenue streams that will accommodate that? Or will the projection on what our revenue streams are only accommodate such and such a number? And that's what you want to get the sheriff to by June. We are not asking to create conflict. We're asking to see something that reduces our concern for the success of the sheriff's department. Because I think we have a majority of folks who are concerned that this will or will not work right because there's this gap. And we're just doing the math on these numbers and not coming up with the right answers. Mr. Chairman, I have one more question. Okay, this is on the baby side of the issues, but one that can blow up on us. Food service. We have a bid out for new food service. Is your staff being creative in who they're reaching out to and what they're looking for? Because as you know, at least one or two of my colleagues and I wouldn't feed our worst enemies food from the jail.
Through the chair, to the councilwoman, yes, they are. There's a lot of different opportunities out there. We've had that discussion about everything cannot be just the formal hire company A to deliver product B. There may be some other options, some hybrid versions, and they are being creative as they reach out. If anyone has any recommendations, please send them to us, because we need to have the most amount of options on the table before we move forward in order to improve that condition.
To the chair, who is the us person? Am I reaching direct, am I calling you or I calling one of your staff with a recommendation?
Through the chair, to the councilwoman, call me.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, and we have another round from Councilman Gallagher, and then we have Councilman Tuma, and then Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Walter, am I to understand, to make it clear, in the budget book, that the 2024-2025 revenue enhancements, recommended budget adjustments, and recommended ODIs that are listed here are in the budget?
The recommendations that are in the budget include some of the ODIs the sheriff has submitted.
All these are not in the budget?
Not all of them, no.
Then this is getting worse. This is getting, so, well, let me see what's in, okay? So maybe it can help us. Base budget adjustments to increase 2% for cost of living adjustments. Is that in?
That's in.
That's in. Base budget adjustments to increase 5% for employers' share of healthcare coverage.
That's in.
That's in. Recommended budget increase for internal charges such as maintenance, security, and indirect costs.
That's in.
That's in. Recommended budget increase funding for the jail, which would be the 40 additional correction officers.
That's in.
That's in. Collective bargaining agreement adjustments.
That's in.
That's in. Medical.
That's in.
Food.
That's in.
Mandated CBA overtime.
Oh, we have about 6 million of overtime in. Yeah, that's the mandated overtime. That's in.
So what isn't in? That's all I have listed.
Oh, no, there's a section in the recommended budget book.
That's all I have.
The decision package starting on page 55. If you go to 55 and you flip over to the sheriff's office, there are more items that were not approved by the county executive.
The largest of those would be the 90 deputies, is that correct?
That is correct.
55, but my number.
Starts at
Page
55,
55.
I'm sorry.
I have no 55.
Page,
That might
page
answer that.
71, I'm sorry.
I get to 54.
Yeah, the numbers got faded there.
Councilmember Stevens? I couldn't hear you. Microphone.
Sorry, 71 or 72 is what I was saying, is where I thought the numbers were, and
Yeah, I would
They
say it
just-
starts on page 71.
Okay. Okay, so we know what's in, what is out.
We can go right through the list if you like. There's vacancies
For
listed.
the list, because we're all confused here.
Okay, vacancies and HR hiring plan, 27 deputies. Additional LE, law enforcement hiring plan, 90 deputies. 4 deputy sheriff sergeant, 4 deputy sheriff lieutenants. It's a total of $12.5 million.
Okay, and what was the justification for the request of the 90 deputies?
Through the chair to the councilman, that's just to increase the units we discussed earlier. Courts, electronic monitoring, investigations for the jail, those kind of functions.
And the executive decided not to put that in?
Correct.
Sheriff, through the chair, you said you had an understanding to keep this discussion going. Who do you have an understanding with?
Through the chair to the councilman, I had a lot of discussion with the executive and with chief of staff as to some of these functions, and he asked the same question you asked, what exactly is that 94? It wasn't broken down in the book. So when I explained what the 90 was for, we agreed to meet on those, discuss those, and as we identify what that need is, try and meet them one at a time. In other words, unit by unit, let's say. Maybe electronic monitoring first, maybe then courts, maybe then we'll look at investigations, kind of walk it through like that.
The 2-year budget, either it's in or it's out. And right now, it's out.
Yes, the chairman's point is well taken. The budget process is where these kind of decisions should be made. You know, I don't think we should pass a budget that's a placeholder and then go adding a lot of stuff later on. Now, if something totally unexpected comes up that requires money, well, then that's different, and you do a fiscal agenda item for it and fix it. But things that are believed to be needed and that can be reasonably anticipated, like the things that were requested in these decision items, we should make a decision in this budget process. Either we're going to fund them or we're not going to fund them. Are you done for now?
Mr. Chairman, I'm still confused on who made the decision on the overtime cut?
When we build a budget, we generally do not include overtime. We decided to add at least the mandatory piece of overtime, which was about $6 million.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we're coming up on 20 million for last year, or this year, and you're recommended at least.
It's about
Recommended.
$6 million.
You're
is what's in
11.5 million under, you had 11.5 million cut just in 24, almost 12 million cut in 25. Is that reasonable budgeting? Knowing full well, we're going to hit 20.
Through the chair to Councilman Gallagher, you know, we add 40 corrections officers with the expectation that that overtime number is going to drop. There should be some offset for that. If we hire 40 staff, we shouldn't need that much overtime.
Mr. Chairman, I'm very uncomfortable with that because as we all know, you add 20, you lose 15. It's kind of a liquid thing. There seems to be some interesting budgeting maneuvering here, and I don't get it. I've only seen this one other time, and that one other time, this council took the budget, ripped it up, redid it, and handed it back to the executive. I hate to think we're back in those days again. So I think at least when it comes to the sheriff's budget, I think many of us up here have open questions. I still don't know the process. I don't know, and I kind of feel sorry for the sheriff here because he's new, and this is his first go-around, and we're asking questions that I don't think he's prepared to answer, and not because he's not prepared. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman.
So, Councilman Toomer's next, followed by Schwan and Conwell.
I appreciate that. Well, several of my colleagues have discussed the same concerns I have about the budget itself. So my main concern is that the administration is coming in indicating that they have a balanced budget for this department, and they don't. I don't want the administration to say they have a balanced budget if they don't have a balanced budget, because it's just, I mean, this is what this hearing is about. These are what these hearings are about. And to come in here, it's disingenuous to say we have a balanced budget when you have excluding 90 deputies and cutting the overtime to that extent. And you can play with numbers, and as Councilman Gallagher said, I don't have a comfort level doing that with overtime, not knowing what the future holds as far as the necessity for overtime. It's just, I mean, honestly, it's kind of, it's unacceptable to come before council with a budget like this. It's irresponsible too. And I have to say, you know, I know the sheriff is new. I'm not sure what the process is as far as who's discussing what with whom. I hope the sheriff and the county executive are having face-to-face conversations on these issues. Sheriff, as Councilman Sweeney indicated, you know, you're the safety expert. fought long and hard up here for an independent sheriff, and we've had big battles over that. And, you know, it's instances like these, you know, that allow people to sit there and say, well, maybe, you know, the sheriff should be a separate department and you should have a elected sheriff. These are the types of instances that occur when you know, issues, you know, such as this arise. It's just, I would hope that the county executive would listen to the expert. And Sheriff, you're the expert. If you need 90 deputies and you have a great, you know, understanding of the situation and an explanation as to why you need those, then those should be budgeted in our, you know, for our budget hearings. As far as overtime goes, again, we don't know what the future holds. And what happens if you have a situation where you have to use your overtime and we're out of money, we can't use officers for overtime? What do you do about that? I mean, it's just, you know, it's just come to a head here with this particular budget, and Councilman Gallagher alluded to it. It happened once before with the prior administration, and that was unacceptable then, and this is unacceptable now. These budgets aren't to come and say, here, we have kind of an idea here. I'm not talking being $1 million, $2 off. You know, there's a substantial gap here between what is being presented by the Sheriff's Department and what the administration is putting forth. So there has to be a sit-down discussion with the executive or his top chief of staff or what have you, and you got to work these numbers out better. And I mean, we have to go through this again at some point because this is just not acceptable.
Councilman Tron.
Thank you, Mr.
Followed
Chairman.
by Conwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many people total are in the Sheriff's Department right now? This is on payroll 12. Remember, I'm not trying to add anything in there.
Let me, through the chair to Councilman Schramm, pay 12, we had 1,084.
1,000 what?
1,084.
1,084, okay. So let me see if I understand the math here. From the county executive's budget, it is now, if we fast forward that's now 1,124 if we add the 40. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councilman Schramm.
And through the chair, the sheriff, you're advocating another 90 on top of the 1,024. Is that correct?
We're currently at 1156, through the chair to the councilman, we're currently at 1156.
1156. Wait a minute, I thought I heard 1,084.
Councilman Schramm, we were 1,084 at pay 12.
I'm sorry, I stand corrected. Okay. So so have we already added the 40 at the 1,056?
No, we were at 1,084. We add 40. We're at 1,124.
So Sheriff, what did you say you're at right now, head count?
Today, we're at 1156.
Okay, well, that's clearly more than 40 above 1,084. Have we already added the 40 that you were telling us that the budget has already built into this, Mr. Parcialis?
Councilman Schramm, it appears so. I mean, if the sheriff is at 1,156, yeah, he's exceeded our number.
He's already added the 40 that you were talking about. He's actually added part of his 90.
We're at 643 correction officers.
Sheriff Patel, can you speak into the microphone, please?
As the math.
Through the chair to the councilman, we're currently at 643 correction officers.
643.
And our maximum budgeted number was 725.
And what does the 725 represent? Is that, because again,
Maximum budget, but not maximum, maximum approved was 725.
so you already have approved almost the entire 90.
That is correct, because that's 82 more.
Through the chair to the councilman, the 90 was for deputy sheriffs. 643 is the correction officers were.
Okay.
Make sure we're talking apples to apples. The increase of 40 was for correction officers.
I'm going to get to a real simple question, Sheriff, because we've been asking tough questions from the budget side. We're talking about adding 130 new people from pay 12 to what you're suggesting. That is a 10%, more than a 10% increase in workforce. I find it hard to believe any organization could absorb, train, skill, get them up to speed and everything else for more than 10% of their workforce. I find that's as hard to accept as the budget numbers are. So you're telling me you're promising this body, give you the money for 130 new people, and you're going to get them up and trained and speed and get them up to speed. I find that just as hard to believe as some of the budget numbers, to be quite honest, because I think that's really a yeoman's task.
Through the chair to the councilman, breaking that down, 90 would be deputy sheriffs. Those units where they would function in, they're all not 90 reporting to one place, different places. We have an FTO program, no issue there. The 40 correction officers is not uncommon that we hire batches of 40, of 36, of 32. That's not uncommon. So that, separating that from it, that goes on normally. And as Councilman Gallagher said, you hire 20, you lose 15. We're used to that. On the deputy side, the reason I went through the slide presentation earlier was to show the amount of work that they do. That magic number of 180 budgeted deputy sheriffs is probably over 40 years old. The functions of today's sheriff department are much different. And besides creating new units and doing different things, just to manage the courts, investigate crimes in the jail, just to handle those things.
Sheriff, for clarification, on the deputies, you're proposing to go from 180 to 270, which would be a 50% increase. Is that correct?
Yes, Council. Yes, sir.
That's a massive increase to be done in 1 year. I think
That's my point.
Is on the right track.
I just can't, I think we need to get, through the chair, the purpose of budgeting is to make sure you understand we're supporting your desire to run the department, but not at an unreasonable burden to the taxpayers that you can't get. You could have a bigger mess by bringing in too many people that don't learn their job. I mean, there's only so much you can absorb at one time. So I want to be on both sides of this fundamental fairness, the money side for the taxpayers and your efficiency side. So I think there really needs to be a sit down outside this room, sadly. When it comes to us, we think we're getting it in its already redacted stage. We're not. We're getting into this, and we're actually making the soup, it sounds like, right here in front of everybody, and that's not a pretty picture, in my opinion. So,
through the chair, the councilman, I'm going to respond to that because that I just want to make sure we scope this appropriately. That initial request that I set forth, a magic wand or an ideal world that would optimize our operation. If that were to be granted, and we could hire 90 deputy sheriffs tomorrow, I know they would be put to work. They'll be effective, efficient, well-supervised, and professional. Why? Because I know that the staff that we have and the management that we have in place would make that happen. So I feel 1,000% confident that we can make that happen. If it's a budgetary matter and the numbers don't add up, I understand. And maybe that's something to work through and crunch the numbers. But if that were the reality, I want to just make sure that we're all very clear. I am 1,000% confident we could make that happen because that's what you hired me to do, to make sure that we make things right. And I know that in that space, we can do that. So, and then some people might say, where would you get them? Because in today's day and age, hiring law enforcement officers is a challenge for many agencies, not for the sheriff's department. There's a reason we're at 180 today, which is our maximum cap, and we do have a list a mile long of officers who want to be laterals. In other words, they're already police officers somewhere else. They want to come here and be deputy sheriffs. They're not brand new out of the academy. So they have some requisite knowledge, maybe rudimentary, but they have some requisite knowledge. We would channel that appropriately in the right confines with the right FTO training. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that everyone handles their own space accordingly. And when it comes to that, I am 1,000% confident my staff could make that happen.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the sheriff's confidence. I just lack my ability to believe that any group can absorb that kind of training level. I've always historically seen that it takes about 1.5 years to 2 years to get people up to speed. And if you can do that through a magic wand, that you believe in your confidence, that's great. I just have I think that digestible, it seems like it's more of a transitional as opposed to dropping 90 people, because this body is somehow feeling, I believe, that somehow we're shortchanging you if we don't grant your request for 90. I'm also becoming a little more skeptical of your 90, not because you don't want them, but because I don't think it happens that easily. Thank you.
Ms. Conwell.
Thank you. Through the chair to the sheriff, just wanted to make, I'm going to make a statement. Someone made these decisions. I don't know who made the decisions not to put everything in the budget that we know that we're facing. Had several similarities with the Health and Human Services Department. We know that we're building and expanding, but the budgets aren't in here. So I've been pushing myself to make sure that they're reflective so we can appropriately budget them. That's what a budget's for, and I think you've heard that enough from my colleagues. My question would be, will any of these, have you given any thought, will any of these decrease in the numbers of employees you feel that we need to hire when the new jail is complete? I know there'll be a different layout and all of those things, so just have you given any thought to that?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, yes, I've given that a lot of thought, and that is a source of a lot of discussion. That would be a likely scenario, given potentially the layout or the programming and different things. However, that is probably easily 5 years plus away. We have to deal in the immediacy of today and of the next few budget cycles for sure. So that's why I think that staying the course with the current numbers in the correctional facility and increasing those accordingly is the important thing to do.
And the attrition will help itself along the way of those 5 years.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, as we get there, yes, I think that will play a role.
Okay, thank you.
So, Sheriff, I have one question, which is, how far have we come along on determining what kinds of data we need to collect for the jail and how that data is going to be used, and will it cost, what will it cost to collect that information, and do we need additional resources for that?
Councilman, that is something we had a discussion today with Chief Soltis, and that's something we keep discussing is the jail management system. When I was here on day 77, I informed you that we're still crafting the RFP. It is near completion. I am very proud of the work that they're doing, bringing in additional partners to scope what else we want our system to do. But the most important thing is that those metrics that are in that system should alert us, number one, to the likelihood of someone having medical distress in our facility. Number one, because that is something that we see. It's easy to ask some of those questions, but with some of the people who come into the jail on a regular basis, and some do, it's just a matter of life, it is good for us to be able to determine medical condition and history, addiction, treatment, sobriety, detoxing, et cetera, so we can put a number on that. All of that is something I think is a key component to our system. Number one. Number two would be days in custody. Number three would be on a previous visit, if they went into distress, what day they went into distress. I think I spoke about that earlier, where the day or hour of distress even certainly gives us some insight into what caused the distress. Was it an overdose coming in the door from outside, or was it because they got a hold of something somewhere else? Or was it simply a medical issue? So I think that's very important for us to track also. So many other metrics we currently have, and our system is on its last leg, but we kind of keep it cobbled together. So if there any information council needs, we can crunch it up. But I think that the new system, the biggest thing it's going to do is allow us to track that in our inmates.
Thank you very much, Councilman Kelly.
Mr. Chairman. So, through the chair, I have no doubt that you could increase the size of the sheriff's department and have it work efficiently. We all know when it comes to budgets, there's wish lists. Not everything gets through the wish list, but this appears to me that there's been too many cooks in the kitchen. And you want one thing, the executive gives us another thing. They're nowhere close to each other. this thing needs to be reworked and brought back to us. This is not going to work the way it is right now. So through the chair, I'd have to say that this last meeting we've been in over this is going to have to be held all over again with a budget that the executive and the sheriff can live with. At this point, that's my point.
Thank you very much. I think that point is well taken. Okay, so we've had a long discussion, the longest of these hearings so far, and I'd like to thank you very much for coming in, and we're going to all give this further thought. We're going to work with you and the administration and work to figure this out so that we get a budget that makes the best decisions about what things are the most important and that we should provide for, and that the necessary funds are included to do so. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
We are now going to take a 13-minute break, and we're going to come back at 3:30. 3:30.
Oh, yeah.
Committee of the Whole, biennial budget hearing will please return to order.
Councilmember Miller, we couldn't hear you. Thank you.
Committee of the Whole, Finance and Budget hearings will please come back to order. Okay. Next on our agenda is the Department of Information Technology. Director Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Johnson, Chief Information Officer for Cuyahoga County. All right, first of all, I want to say thank you very much. It was a long session. I'm going to move quickly through my presentation. However, I don't want to give the appearance that I don't want to answer questions. So I'll pause, ask for questions, but try to keep this moving. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present. And I know during Walter's kickoff presentation, there were several questions about the ERP, and I plan to address those later on in the presentation.
So unless there's something that's urgent, I'm going to ask colleagues to wait till the presentation is completed and jot down the questions, and then we'll have all the questions at the end.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to start off by discussing what comprises the budget for 2024-2025 for the Department of IT. And when I talk about this budget at this point, I'm talking about the general fund predominantly. HHS IT was covered during the HHS presentation, and so we're specifically going to talk about the general fund, and then in addition, we have a small piece that's funded by the real estate assessment fund. So please keep in mind, general fund is what we're discussing here. In general, for 24-25, we're talking about 42% of the general budget is for our FTEs. And part of those FTEs, it does reflect a $400,000 reduction in our multimedia space to the Department of IT. That department is going to shift to the Department of Communications, and that budget has been accounted for in that manner. And the last thing that I will put out there is that the Department of IT currently has about 20 open positions, and so that's something to keep in mind as we talk through this budget, and I know that question will come up. I'd like to very quickly walk through what our departments are. We have the administration department that covers folks like the finance team that I'm responsible for. We have our web development team, which covers items like our website and the team that develops that website. It also covers the applications such as our real estate assessment and our real estate taxing applications. We have our project management team, which is what we refer to as the project management office. It's our PMO, and that houses our project managers that are deployed to various projects that we have. We have our security team, and that again is focused on cybersecurity and focused on security of our information systems and our information. We have our engineering team. Our engineering team is responsible for managing those servers, those hardware, those components that make up our IT infrastructure. Our enterprise application team, that is the team that manages predominantly our ERP system, but also manages our sheriff and medical examiner applications. We have our WAN services team. That is really, WAN is our wide area network, and that's really our networking team. How do people connect to our infrastructure? And then finally, our communication team. That really is our phone systems as well as our mobile phones. That comprises our general fund departments, and those departments are funded as listed on the slide, and that should match what's in our in your budget booklet. And then finally, to wrap it up, we have our GIS team, and that is funded by the real estate assessment, and that really is a team that's focused on GIS. You've heard our executive talk about a geographically informed government. This is the site that does the mappings. This is the group that does the analysis and puts space to our data. I will keep moving here unless there's any urgent questions.
Okay.
So our budget, I shouldn't have moved so quick. Our budget reflected at $29.7 million for 2024, did have some slight increases. And those increases, which are highlighted on page, I believe that's, I think it's 64 in the decision packet report, those total $1.82 million. And that is included in our budget for 24. I'd like to walk through those very quickly to give you an idea of what bumped up as compared to last year. The first item on here is the annual cost of our Cisco VoIP. And sorry for the acronym there, but that is our Voice over Internet Protocol. It's our phone system, basically. It's the phones that are sitting on everybody's desks. That was paid for in a one lump sum about 5 years ago. It was $2.5 million at that time. And so this being the 6th year of that we are now have to pay for that. So that was not in last year or even the prior to that year's budget. So we have to add that into that budget this year, which we anticipate to be about $530,000. We have a disaster recovery program, the operations of that. And that's something that we've talked previously about. When I first got here, I came to realize that we did not have a robust disaster recovery program. This is now the funds that we're asking for, and the executive has granted for us to actually operationalize our disaster recovery. We still have a long way to go to get to a full disaster recovery, but this starts this process. It gives us the ability to work with our vendors to do disaster recovery. The third item on here is a managed detect and response, or commonly known as MDR. This is something that was paid for and utilized by the county up until 2019. There were some budget situations back at that time. It is time now to bring this back. It is an organization of our size should have something of an MDR. What this does is it allows for off-hours monitoring of our system to look for and detect any sort of breach, any sort of break in our security, and then react to that. Currently, we have in-house staff doing that. But this work is easily outsourced. It's something that many organizations do, and it also gives us 7x24 coverage. The fourth item that it was an increase was our Microsoft licensing, and this was fairly well publicized. Microsoft, for the first time in years, increased globally their cost of service, and so this reflects that increase in cost of service by about $440,000. And then finally, about $200,000, we asked the executive for funding for data security management. And while that sounds a bit confusing, what this is a service, and it's software, I should say it's software and services that we can use to actually secure our data. Formerly, we've been focused on securing our network, focused on securing the hardware, the paths, but this is actually looking at our data. And we start to look at things like, what is personal data? What are those pieces of data, and what is their classification? And so that is something that we haven't done at the county. And where this is really going to start having benefit is when we start engaging in our records retention policy. Because we've been keeping everything. And so as we've been keeping everything, our data storage requirements keep expanding and keep expanding. And a lot of this is because of some court and subpoenas that we're under a do not destroy in a lot of cases. We're going to be coming off of that and we'll start to be able to get rid of data per our policy and per our schedule. This tool will help us do that efficiently, help us do it practically. And so again, at a $200,000 price tag, that is an operational expense that we foresee increasing. Mr. Chairman, I'll continue to the next slide if there's no questions.
Can I have one question? On that last point through the chair to Mr. Johnson, you said 200,000. Would, so for a 2-year, that'd be 4. Do they have a contract or something if we bought multiple years, it could actually be cheaper?
So through the chair to the council person, Yes, and that's something, one of the balances that I have is we do like to go to some length on some of those multi-year agreements to get that price lowered. The danger there is, just like we had with the voice on the top, is that if you pay for it up front, over years, you kind of lose sight. When you look back at last year, you're like, oh, we spent X, therefore we should spend X plus a little percentage going to this year. So I like to, the technique I like to use here is to enter into these multi-year agreements, not too long, but enough years where we can get a discount, but then pay for those annually. So it gives us a nice even distribution on our budget. So I think that's a great idea, and it's something that we definitely look at all of our agreements.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, so then that brings us to our capital plan. And first of all, I know that and thanks particularly to you, Mr. Chairman, you put pressure to produce a 5-year capital plan for IT, and that's something that hasn't been done before. And so I think that worked out well. I think it was a great idea, and it gives us all a view of what I'm expecting and what our team is expecting to evolve over the next few years. And the first item on here, and we have a couple more slides devoted to that, is the ERP finance system upgrade. And this is not in your booklet. That was an oversight on my part. But we have this scheduled to be, this project to begin in 2026, 2027, and 2028. So Chairman Miller, I know that I met with you over the summer, and we talked about that time frame being more near term. And in discussions with the executive, in discussions with my team, in discussions with the functional groups, we simply aren't ready as a county to embark on that next year. We still have more planning. We're still utilizing and rolling out new features of the current ERP. And so I think we all collectively thought that the time frame of 2026 would be a much better time. We'd be much better prepared. We could take a very measured and thorough RFP process, do a very good vetting, and get our county ready for this change that will be coming in 2026. And I'll have more information on that in the next couple of slides.
So, Director, is the 4.22 million for 2024 and the 4.43 million for 2025, are those items all included in the budget?
I believe they are, yes.
Okay.
Yep, they would be in the capital section. So rather than being the operating, they're in the capital section of the budget. Just a couple other things, and I'm not going to go through this entire list, although I'm happy to if there's any questions. But we talked a little bit about disaster recovery, and that's one of the bigger items that's on our capital plan. And as I mentioned earlier, we had no disaster recovery when we first got here. I shouldn't say no, we had limited disaster recovery. As we go through these next few years, we'll be working to expand that disaster recovery. You know, we have data centers that are up here in Cleveland. We have a data center that's down in Columbus. And right now, if we lost a data center, that would impact us. Our goal is with disaster recovery and the implementation of this capital expenditure is to make those redundant so that if we lost one, we could still continue full operations. The next one I'll highlight, and that's the next one down on the line, and then I'll stop going through this, is our network hardware upgrades. We still are contending with legacy hardware that in an IT environment is shockingly old. We have some core servers that are 20 years old. We have components that are 12 to 15 years old. That money, that capital is to be directly invested into replacing that antiquated equipment. Okay, keep rolling?
Keep rolling.
All right, thanks. I'll flip to the next page unless there's any other questions. What's that? Okay. Coming to then the ERP, and I know that there is some questions on the ERP. There was a couple of misconceptions during Walter's presentation that every year we need to upgrade the ERP. And that really is not true. In our current configuration with ERP, for the most part, we consume what I would say are fixes, our patches, we consume those throughout the year. And so the idea of the old school upgrades has kind of gone away for most of the modules we have. Enterprise asset management, human resources, learning management, all of these modules that we have with the ERP, we are up to date, we consume those patches, we consume those upgrades just as a matter of course of business. So the traditional upgrade has gone away with those, with two exceptions. The first exception is the WFM system, that is our timekeeping system. That system, through our operational efforts, we are one version behind. We are upgrading that over the course of the first quarter next year. We're not looking for an RFP or anything like that. We can do that with our internal staff, but that is one item that we are slightly behind on. But again, once we get to that next stage where we're upgraded, we'll never have to upgrade again. The large one that we're talking about when it comes to an upgrade is what's referred to as Lawson. And Lawson is our general ledger, it's our accounts receivable, it's our accounts payable. That does need the significant upgrade, and that is what we're talking about on the $6 million that will start in 2026.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, Andy. How are you?
Great, Councilman.
When Walter talked about $10 million being added after the budget was done in the very early presentation.
Yeah.
Is this what this is?
No, this is.
Good. I'll wait for it. That's my one question.
Yeah, so that $6 million we're talking about will happen when we come to do the 26, 27 budget cycle.
This has nothing to do with this.
That will have nothing to do with 24, 25.
And that was just my one question. It's the bottom line for me, for you, is your budget was submitted, then you added 10 million and it added up.
Nope, we are right in line with our budget.
Okay, I'll just figure that out.
Councilmember Sweeney, I couldn't hear you. Microphone?
I will be better in the future, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
Okay. All right, and then I'll keep moving here.
Thanks, that was a very helpful slide.
Okay, and I'm happy to go back to, I know it feels like I'm flying through this, but happy to go back to any of these. The last thing I wanted to mention on the ERP is that we're not stopping. And what I mean by this, I'll start from the bottom, working our way up. These are either the functionality or the modules that we've continued to add to the system since our go live with WFM last year. And it runs all the gamut of the operations of the county. And this has been in close partnership with some great leadership, particularly with HR, Fiscal, and Public Works, right? Working with those leaders to talk about what is the next thing we're going to roll out. And if you work from the bottom up, you can see a number of things that we continue to roll out. We have a few things that we're going to be working on into the next year, which partially leads into why we wanted to hold off on the upgrade. So we have a few more items, functionality that we'd like to roll out. And in fact, I don't know, some of you may think this is funny. I grabbed an old slide of Zig's where he was talking about what we hadn't implemented. And so going through that, I can comfortably say that we've implemented everything that was discussed that he had said that we hadn't implemented. So I feel really good about what the team has done, what the ERP team is doing in terms of continuing to leverage new functionality out of this investment.
Okay, thank you.
And so that is all I have.
Councilman Gallagher.
Only one question from me. And our ERP, which was the big debacle, and many things were promised, few things were delivered. What is the bottom line, the dollar figure that the ERP has saved us last year?
So, Councilman, as much as I would like to give you that number, I can't give you that number.
No, you can't. Because it hasn't saved us anything.
Well, I would, I think that there is an angle, and
there's an angle.
I'm happy to debate it, but this is.
I'm sorry I even asked that question. I really am. You're a nice guy, and you had nothing to do with this horrible leech on the taxpayers. But it is what it is. Thank you.
So, Director, My question is whether everything that you need for cybersecurity and protection of our systems for 24 to 25 is included in your budget.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Any questions, other questions by my colleagues? Okay, you're going to get off relatively easy. Thank you very much for coming down, and thank you for some very clear and helpful slides that give us a good picture of where we're at.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate the support the council has given and the administration has given IT. It's great for the team. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Fiscal Office, including Consumer Affairs, and we have Director Mike Chambers.
Good afternoon. Interim Fiscal Officer Mike Chambers here to talk about the Fiscal Department budget. Walter Parafiowicz reported on the Board of Revision and Consumer Affairs during his presentation 2 weeks ago. I'm going to discuss the remaining departments. I will draw out in the book on page 86. I actually listened to last year's presentation, and we got hung up on a lot of extra money that's really in my budget but does not pertain to my budget. It's the place where we put it. A lot of it is the HHS levy money, general fund subsidy money, the general fund debt. So what I wanted to do is take that all out of the equation and just focus on, you know, the fiscal department budget as a whole.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Sure. So, very briefly, presenting the 24-25 budget. Overall, we have 288 employees, not including the Consumer Affairs and BOR. Once again, a few contracts coming up, and I'll talk a little bit more about them, or at least they'll be mentioned a little bit more, is the Despair Study. We have our annual audit, Clark Schaefer Hackett. We have leases for our auto title, they're ongoing. We have 4 locations. We have our CAMA MVP, our Woolport co-file, and right now we're knee-deep in our sexennial update. No significant eliminations or reductions, basically really no new initiatives other than just continuing some outreach that we've done in the past and will continue to do in the future. And I don't really have any concerns with our budget. With that being said, we'll jump into the fiscal budget, the main component. And on the left is the areas that I'm covering. So it'll be the fiscal administration, Office of Budget Management, finance reporting, the hotel, transfer recording. You'll see transfer recording. You'll see a couple of these in different areas because they're, you know, different funding sources. And microfilm, auto title, and our general services. Overall, personnel services, 125 employees make up this budget, 10.3 million, 2.6 million. We have all the money we need for our contracts. Some of the key ones in this particular budget is our financial advisor, Mr. France, shouldn't have called him out, 165,000. Clark Schaefer Hackett, which is our annual audit. As you know, in the past, we used to have the state of Ohio do our audit. 2 years ago, they contracted with Clark Schaefer. We have a new bed tax system. It's going to be $95,000 a year. We're excited about that. It's going to be fully kind of automated, where instead of the hotels, and actually we're doing it right now, instead of mailing in hard copies, and they're all going to upload online, which will be fantastic. We have another big contract is our communications, our headsets, the way we do our business. We had over, I thought it was almost 90,000 phone calls last year that kind of runs through this system, which is quite a lot. Obviously, the majority of those focus around our tax season. And no matter what system I have or no matter what we do, those last couple days are always going to be difficult times because we actually extended it an extra 2 weeks and still people came in the last day. So, and the phones keep ringing. So we do plan. I do actually, believe it or not, on the phones during collection, I have OBM on board. I have my appraisers on board. I actually add a lot more people. In other counties, that's unheard of because
the recorder, the auditor, and the treasurer are all different. They don't cross, but in here, we're able to, have everyone help out. 4 auto title leases, for our different locations. It's about $310,000 a year total. We have the state that helps us, even though they don't do our main audit, they help us do our, putting together our annual report. Sorry about that. And once again, included in the other expenditures is space maintenance, $369,000. All told, that's about $2.6 million a year. My next slide is the REA assessment fund. Once again, that funds the appraisal, real property, and parts of transfer and recording again. I'll dwell on this again. In other counties, they're separate. For us, we're able to have tax map, transfer recording, and the auditors work hand in hand. We're much more efficient, where in other departments, they have to go from one floor or one building to another to get work done. We're all in one area, so it's pretty neat that we're able to do that. Total budget for this area is $8.8 million in salaries, just under $6 million for other expenditures. Some of the other expenditures include our sexennial reappraisal, which we're underway right now. We're estimating $2.3 million. That's one of the reasons why you'll see a big drop in 2025 in that same line item, because we're going to incur most of that cost this year. We have Oracle license of $140,000. We do flyovers. We have a company that does flyovers. We do ortho imagery. That's $182,000. We have our real property systems, $886,000. We have CoFile, which is our new recording software, which once again is a major improvement. We've been going live this year with it. I don't know if many of you know Pat O'Malley used to be our county recorder, but our old system, we could never pull his name out. Sometimes if we didn't darken it out, it would slip through, because that's how old that system was. And now, thank God, it's all in the past. This system has been really well. We're letting a lot of people e-file on this, which is a great improvement. We weren't able to do that in the past. And then we have our new tablets out in the field. The last one we have is Data Cloud software. It's an appraisal software that our team is using for the first time. Instead of carrying, big paper binders, that you're actually using all on a tablet. All of those contracts add up to about $5.9 million and a total budget of $14,750,000. Jumping into purchasing, one comment. I know on our sheet we had purchasing and DEI separate, but the last time we did the budget, I presented them all, so I just felt they're all fiscal. I would take the lead. They're all here if we do have questions and you have questions for them. I have no problem with them coming up and speaking.
Chair,
yeah.
Does he prefer that we ask questions along the way or save them for the end?
Uh,
All right.
I would like to save it for the end, unless it's something urgent to understand what's being presented.
Okay. I'll continue with the purchasing department. There's 16 employees. Majority of it's our salaries, obviously, $1.4 million. Other expenditures at $823,000. WB Mason's $340,000. We have Brinks at $170,000. Our key P card is $180,000. The $180,000 is kind of a clearing for the departments. We put the charges in purchasing, and then we charge it back to the locations. So we bear that in our budget up front. You add all that up, a bunch of smaller other items, it's $823,000. And I'm happy to say that I believe Paul is going to be fully, I think our last open position has been accepted, and we're waiting to the assistant director in that area is going to be included in this. Moving on then is Treasury. Once again, 44 employees. Our salaries, biggest part of it, $3.5 million. Other contracts that are included in that is our meter, our portfolio management, investment advisor. We do a lot of mailings, Midwest mailings, $93,000, $140,000 in postage. We do some foreclosure assistant contracts, some with Sarah and the housing development for $100,000. And one of our biggest costs is our banking costs, which is our fees that aren't already netted against our earnings and our other credits that we earn. So, and once again, that totals $1.1 million. Moving on to equity and inclusion. Once again, there's 9 employees, fully staffed. And other expenditures, 280,000. Once again, that's going to be included, will be the disparity study. We have some DEI consultants. Both of these are going to get RFP this year. We do have a B2G Now contract for $20,000, and then other travel and small miscellaneous items add up to the 280,000. That's the end of my presentation, other than the fact that some of the outreach that we're getting ready to continue on is in our recording office. We're doing some outreach with our Great Estates program. It was a great success. We had over 2,000 people at 3 events. And starting in January, I'll be going out into the communities talking about the real estate assessment coming up, the sexennial. We're knee-deep in our revaluation, and our goal is, like we did 2 years ago, is to get out ahead of the game and start meeting with people starting in January, February, March, preparing them for the update, preparing them for what they need to do if they don't agree, because there's going to be a short window of time in May and June where they have an opportunity to do the informals, and if they miss that opportunity, then the only other option would be the Board of Revision. So our goal is to get out ahead of time and let everyone know about that. Other than that, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Am I correct that the treasurer is not going to present separately?
No, I just went through him already.
Okay. Ms. Simon?
Mr. Chair, that was my question. Why aren't the individual department heads presenting their own budgets with their own input?
They can, but once again, 2 years ago, I presented everyone as they're all fiscal department, they're all under the fiscal office, and that's why I presented them home. They're here. If there's any questions you want to ask, I have their slides. They're here, all 3 of them, but I did the same thing last year. For whatever reason, this year it was broken out, and I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I think at some point I'll chat with the direct, just to make sure that they have everything they need in their budget. It's kind of flat. But the other question I have is when you start to coordinate the community meetings on the appraisals, to coordinate that with us, each district representative, so we can be at that meeting and coordinate that meeting together.
Yeah, we'll let you know. We try to obviously get the libraries. There's a lot of, we got to book the libraries at the events first before we start sending out
Well, you can do
notifications.
that, right, with each council
Absolutely.
member?
Yeah.
You can do that?
Okay.
Okay. That'd be appreciated. Are you going to have any more of the other kinds of meetings in the districts?
We are going to do some more, backed by popular demand. We had sellout crowds at all of them. So once again, it was an opportunity to choose 3. We did the mailers, and clearly there's a need for that. So we're going to
Did
continue
you
that.
include the council people in those mailers?
I don't know if they got them. If anyone who was on Homestead would have got them, it was on the news. It was all over the building. It was
That's
everywhere.
unfortunate. So I think going forward, when we spend money on these flyers and it goes into individual districts, that it needs to include the council representative for those districts, not just the executive. This needs to be a shared effort, and I think we've already seen them in which districts? Maple?
I mean, all of these were in the know. It was open to
It doesn't
everybody.
matter.
Yeah.
It's not a matter that we know. It matters that our residents know who represents them, and they have an opportunity to attend. That the executive's name is all over everything. I opened up one of those pamphlets, and it's a probate matter, but the executive's on there, but not, when you go to these meetings, the representatives are not included. And I'm going to ask that any future, and my colleagues can weigh in, but I think the ones that have already, they should have been included in that mailer, their names on there.
I concur, because you just had one in Warrensville, which I heard was amazing.
It was great.
Because I think the executive was out there, and I had just kind of popped up for another reason, and I was getting all the accolades for what the executive did. We love that. I just didn't know in advance either.
Yeah.
And they want more.
They do.
So it was a great program.
It was, yeah. Thank you.
So what 3 communities? I know about the Warrensville, Parma.
Parma and Westlake. That was our pilot, yeah.
I wonder if Councilman Kelly was able to get notice of that.
Oh. I mean, we send them out to everyone who was a homestead registered. I mean, I hear what you're saying. We'll work on it. Clearly, you want to be involved, and we'll get you involved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Kelly?
Just piggybacking there, if there's going to be something held in my district, I'd certainly like to be notified of it so I could be there.
Will do.
Thank you.
Miss,
Can I now ask my question?
okay, yes. I think that goes for all of us, that we'd like to know what's happening in our districts.
Duly noted, we'll fix that.
Okay. Director, in the last round, there were significant problems with the online system for tax payments. A lot of people found the system difficult to navigate, and there were even some cases where the system made it look like their payment had been completed, but actually it had not, and so they ended up being asked to charge to pay penalties where they really were not at fault, and my question is do we have that cleaned up for the next round so that the online system is going to work effectively?
You know, I did talk to the new incumbent treasurer about it, and it's funny, in some of the communities, it works great. In other communities, it doesn't for whatever reason. So this is something we're going to certainly invest in and take a, closer look at. It's an opportunity. I also know we upgraded our system. That was another issue we did. You want to take a stab at that as well? Yeah.
All right. Lisa Rocco, Director of Operations for Fiscal. To your point, Councilman, we updated the message online as well so that they know when they make their payment, it's not automatically deducted from their account, and that they should check back to make sure that the payment was accepted.
And are we confident that the online systems are going to work well in this coming round, or is it going to take another round to get things
Listen, it's going to
properly
take,
fixed?
in my opinion, it's going to take another round, because this shouldn't be that complicated. People are able to swipe and pay like that for whatever reason, and that's what I was getting at. Some of our other counties are experiencing the same thing. I don't know if it's whether our software or we just need to get to a different vendor, but that's something we're going to explore. It should not be that cumbersome. People should know exactly what they're taking out, not double or not, it was very difficult. And we're looking to fix that.
Okay. Other questions by my colleagues? Ms. Conwell.
Thank you. To start, through the chair to Mr. Chambers, I'd like a copy of your presentation. Didn't get one. I was going to make the same comments in regards to the sexennial budget and making sure that we have plenty of informal meetings for the communities. Unfortunately, we may not get invited to the events you guys host, but we get the phone calls, and then we're calling you guys. But my question was in regards to, I didn't get his.
You didn't get, I gave copies.
Oh, okay. It's called, I thought it was the executive. I apologize. I just saw executive and I didn't see the fiscal part. At a hotel lodging cost that you stated, your department is the one that keeps a record of all the departments' hotel lodgings?
So every hotel has to, comply, and one of our goals is, our jobs is to audit them.
My mind is somewhere else. Okay. Thank you. You've answered the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, you're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about the miscommunication. We'll fix it. Okay.
Okay, next we have Office of Innovation and Performance, and Chief Gallagher is going to make the presentation.
Tall.
Huh.
Did you want to start here or?
Sorry. Katie Gallagher, I am the Chief of Operations and Community Innovation in the Executive's Office. And hopefully the last presentation that you guys have today. So on page 100 of your budget books is the Office of Innovation and Performance. In total for 2024, it is $668,397. And this includes 4 FTEs. It's a small but mighty team that we have here. We do have two vacancies really. One with our Chief Innovation Performance, Catherine Tatachik, the head just left this year. And there's also a performance consultant that is a vacancy clearly on the books. 90% of this current salary is personnel costs. We do also have the Cleveland Foundation Fellows that flow in and out of that current budget, but that is just primarily grant funding. It's in and out. There are 2 minor contracts as part of this budget, one for ClearPoint. This is where we monitor our operational metrics. And another was Connected Neo, which is decreased for this upcoming year. There's no significant eliminations, increases, or expenditures that aren't covered in this budget at this time. And so in this office, there are really 3 primary functions: the process improvement, the digital inclusion, and then the operational metrics. And just for your sake, I know you guys don't have a lot of time with this office. I just included a couple other slides that you can kind of go through your leisure on talking about the performance metrics, the yellow belt, the green belt, the black belt that's headed by Kirill, who does an amazing job. Going into 2023, we're estimated to cap about $1 million in improvements out of the staff that's being trained by Kirill through these process improvements. So he's just done a fabulous job with the help of Cassie and Dale as well. And just to highlight some of the departmental projects that are going on, this is in conjunction with employees embedded in these departments, either doing their yellow, green belt, or black belt. And then one just little highlight coming out of the U.S. Census. If you could see the major dent in Cuyahoga County where we were able to connect unconnected households, I think this is a major winner. I think this department's primarily a great example of helping get this work through along with yourselves and the county executive investment in this area. And I just, if you wanted a little bit know where we're at with PCs for People and the connection, maybe this could go through one of the committees. I just don't want this department's hard work and dedication to ever get lost. So I just want to highlight a little bit. And that's it.
Questions for Chief Gallagher? Ms. Simon.
I do. Chief Gallagher, so in the past, we've had the county stat program, and you've heard me speak of that. Is this something akin where there's a way to really measure each department and how they're doing? Is that kind of what this is?
Yes. So the ClearPoint allows us to take the metrics and take a look at what we're doing. Right now, Cassie has been going through with each department. What we've done in the past is taken the old strategic plan, and you've seen these metrics on top of your budget books. And what those are related to is a past strategic plan. As we go forward and look at our new strategic plan, we also want to take a look at refreshing what metrics we're looking at. I did have her take a look at the old county stat program, look to see what they are running, and then she as well benchmarked that throughout different agencies and counties and cities throughout the United States to see what they're measuring and what they're seeing as their level of success, and then sat down with each one of the directors in the departments and said, well, how do you feel like you measure your success in your department? And so she's put together a book, and we'd like to try to merge that all together with a strategic plan to make sure that we're going forward, we're actually measuring those things and making some dents and improvements. And also recognizing where we're doing poorly, right? We have to hit that baseline. In order to get improvement, we have to acknowledge where we as a county could be missing the mark so we can improve that.
Is there any particular place in the county that needs the most help?
I mean, I think every single place I think every department in every government can constantly have improvements. I don't want to say there's one particular area where, they're just screaming out, but I would say the sheriff's department could use the most help as far as process improvement and metricing and metrics. And I would say that is probably as a result coming in brand new of the leadership change that has been constant. So you go a little bit different direction with every new leadership change. And so a little consistency and continuity and then sort of setting those metrics will be helpful. I do know that the EY study is about to be introduced to you. I think you'll see a little bit of areas where that's kind of called out in there, a little aspects in the fiscal office and then the clerk of courts, just kind of process improvements. And, where there's a lot of data collection, there tends to be a lot of ability to make improvements.
Yeah, thank you. And then you're going through a strategic plan now?
We are attempting to go through, we did an RFI. We need to go back out and do an RFP and select a vendor.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Conwell.
Thank you. Through the chair to Chief, I just want to confirm you said 90% of the IP budget is personnel costs. Those two vacancies, are they included in your budget currently?
No, they are not.
And how much would those additionally be?
Approximately 200,000.
So you don't feel that it should be added in? Take some time to hire individuals, but this is a 2-year budget, so I think it would.
Yeah, so at the point where the chief of staff was interim and we had a new chief of staff going on, I didn't think that would be an appropriate call for me to make the decision on whether to move forward with filling that chief. So I've left that to Eric Janis, and he has asked that we kind of reevaluate towards the end of the year.
Anything else? Councilman Kelly?
To the chief, would you just humor me and explain what yellow, green, and black means?
Sure. There are process improvements. So the process improvement classes, essentially, they'll take a task that you think that you feel like there might be an improvement, and they'll process map those things. So say it's taking you 15 steps to accomplish one particular task. And it's you looking at each one of those steps and saying, is there inefficiency or duplication, or can I do this faster by eliminating some of these steps with either just the way that you do it, or maybe there's a technology improvement that you could implement with it, and essentially just making it quicker, faster, more efficient.
So, Chief Gallagher, is this office doing anything with community-wide metrics like measuring things like educational level, poverty rates, income level, infant mortality, jail populations, safety statistics, community-wide progress on diversity and inclusion, things like that? Are we doing that? And if so, is that being done in the Innovation Office?
Some of those are, yes. And I think because some of those aspects fall within departments, invest in children, the educational component, that may be something that pulled out. The jail numbers is something the sheriff has identified as important, and he's very into measuring data. So there was a very good, robust conversation between him and Cassie about, what would be helpful for him to look. And again, it was an opportunity for him to get introduced to the GIS team. There's a couple things that Tom worked on as a product of that meeting for him. So just those kind of conversations, making sure that the county's not working in a silo and we're looking at it more globally.
So I would recommend that we need to to focus more on improving the quality of life in Cuyahoga County and measuring that, and that although different departments might take primary responsibility for pieces of it, there has to be some coordination of the overall program in one place. Certainly, the Innovation Office would make sense as a good place to do it, so that we have a sense of how we're performing as a community on a global basis. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, as I understand it, Department of Purchasing and Department of Equity Inclusion were included as part of Director Chambers' presentation, but if any of my colleagues have any questions for those directors individually, now's the time. I don't see any, so we're going to go on to miscellaneous business, and I would just announce that the next budget hearing is going to be this Thursday, the 2nd at 1 p.m. Is there any other miscellaneous business? Hearing none. Oh, I heard a motion to adjourn. Is there a
Second.
second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank